I'd like to call public hearing to order for September 26, 2022. We have several items on public hearing tonight. The first item is TP Ordinance 2253, an ordinance repealing the language of Chapter 44 in its entirety and reserving the chapter. Anyone here to speak on that item? The next item is TP Ordinance 2254, an ordinance amending and enacting Chapter 36, Planning and Development, Article 5, Standards for Development of Property, Section 36-112, Special Classification Property Development Standards, A4, Spacing of Manufactured Home. The next item is TP Ordinance 2255, an ordinance amending and enacting Chapter 36, Planning and Development, Article 5, for Development of Property, Section 36-116, Special Use Residential Commercial Developments, C2, Maximum Density and Minimum Acres. The next item is TP Ordinance 2256, an ordinance amending and enacting Chapter 36, Planning and Development, Article 8, Developments with Special Provisions, Section 36-222, Mining Operations. And we have Mr. Kelly Harmon that would like to speak on that item. Please. Mr. Harmon, state your name and address, please.
Name is Kelly Harmon. My address is 51573 Wig Lane, Laranger, Louisiana. My understanding is that Ordinance 2253 is doing away with Chapter 44 because it's duplicated in Chapter 36-222. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is.
My question is, when was Chapter 44 put into effect? What year?
I was just given these documents when I got here today, so I didn't have time to research all that, but I've talked to our legal counsel, and I understand that you have a question about the date, and we appreciate you catching that because that was an oversight. So we're going to...
My understanding, it was put in service and approved and put into effect in 2008.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
So would I be correct in assuming that all pits who have started operations since 2008 would have to comply to Chapter 44, have to be in compliance with 44 since 2008?
Yes, since July 14th, 2008.
Okay, so now we're moving that over to 36, Chapter 36, Section 222, subsection B, as in Bravo, subsection 8. That's what I want to talk about, is existing pits or ponds, is pits that are currently operating, meaning dirt has been removed from the site for commercial purposes as of the effective date of the ordinance from which this article is derived. They're exempt. So what is the effective date from what this article is derived?
It would be the 2008 date.
Okay, so like it won't be 36's date, which is 2020.
No, sir. We need to amend the language and make sure that that date is added. And then,
so
like I
we'll
said,
have
we
a 12-year loophole that these pits don't have to comply if we don't.
Right.
Okay?
No, we appreciate you catching that.
Right.
That was an oversight on our part. So thank you, Mr. Harmon.
Thank you.
Let me get to it. Which one to add? Add that right here.
Yes. All right, the next item is TP Ordinance 2257, an ordinance amending and enacting Chapter 36, Planning and Development, Article 8, Developments with Special Provisions, Section 36, 224, Renewable Energy Power Plants, C, General Regulations. The next item is TP Ordinance 2258, an ordinance to grant a variance to Section 36-112, Special Classification Property Development Standards for John Malazzo Sr., assessment number 5413508 in District 2. The next item is 2259, an ordinance to grant a variance to Section 36-112, Special Classification Property Development Standards for Charlie T. Moore and Jody Young, assessment number 2122006 in District 7. And the last item is TP Ordinance 2261, an ordinance to grant a variance to Section 36-90, minor subdivision standards for Terrence Whitaker / Century Financial Services, assessment 2968118 in District 9. There's no one to speak on any, I'm sorry, District 8. If there's no one to speak on those items, we will call our regular business meeting to order. If you have a cell phone, please mute it or turn it off at this time. We'll have our invocation by Mr. Wells, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Mr. Ingraffia. Please stand.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we come before you tonight. And Father God, as we come, we want to thank you, Lord God, for the grace and mercy that you give to each and every one of us that has allowed us to make it to this day. Father, as we come before you, we want to thank you for the rights and the privileges that we have in this country, Lord, for your blessing this country, this state, our parish, Lord, and all our people. Father God, as we come tonight, we pray that you would continue to bless us and give us strength, Lord God, and give us the desire to love each other, Father, in a special way. And Father, as we come tonight, oh God, we pray for those people that are going to be affected by the storm. And in that, Lord God, we thank you that you've cut the storms away from us thus far this year, Lord God. And then, Father, as we come, we pray and ask your blessings on our military, both active and our veterans, Lord God. And then, Father, we pray for our first responders and our police. But, Father God, we give all the glory to you, all the honor, Lord God, and we thank you for our Savior, Christ Jesus. For it's in his name we pray. And everyone said, Amen.
Please face the flag. With all veterans and active military, please render the proper salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Zoo, would you please call roll?
Mr. Forrest.
Here.
Mr. Graffia.
Here.
Mr. Joseph. Mr. Bruno. Mr. Richtel.
Here.
Mr. Mayhew.
Here.
Mr. Wells.
Here.
Mr. Vial.
Here.
Ms. Hyde.
Here.
Ms. Coates. Here.
All right, hopefully everyone's had a chance to review the minutes that were emailed to you from the September 12th meeting. If there are no corrections or questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Madam Chairman, I move that we approve the minutes.
Second here.
I have a motion by Mr. Wells, second by Mr. VL. Roll call, please.
Mr. Graffia.
Yes.
Mr. Joseph. Mr. Bruno.
Yes.
Mr. Richtel.
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew.
Yes.
Mr. Wells.
Yes.
Mr. Vial.
Yes.
Ms. Hyde.
Here.
Ms. Ms. Coates.
Yes.
Mr. Forrest.
Yes.
Okay. We need to amend the agenda. This is my fault. I was supposed to put North Oaks Hospital on the agenda to come and speak to us tonight. So if someone would make that motion, please.
Second.
All right, have a motion by Mr. Ridgell, second by Mr. Wells to amend the agenda to add North Oaks. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bruno.
Yes.
Mr. Richtel.
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew.
Yes.
Mr. Wells.
Yes.
Mr. Vial.
Yes.
Ms. Hyde.
Yes.
Ms. Coates.
Yes.
Mr. Forrest.
Yes.
Mr. Graffia.
Yes.
Michelle, would you?
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of our Board of Commissioners, we're here to share some exciting news with each of you, and that is North Oaks has entered into a letter of intent with Children's Hospital out of New Orleans to do extraordinary things for the children of Tangipahoa Parish here. We will become their North Shore home. We have had a relationship with Children's Hospital out of New Orleans for probably close to 7 years now. They manage our neonatal intensive care unit as well as our pediatric unit. This letter of intent will expand the services that we're offering to the children of Tangipahoa Parish and the Florida parishes. So at this time, I'd like to introduce the CEO of Children's Hospital, John Nickens, to tell you a little bit more about it. John?
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to visit. Many of you I saw once before, and we're incredibly proud and thankful. I'm really excited that we have so many people here for Children's Hospital. This is really a transformational idea. Michelle's vision, we know that kids do better in their home environment, surrounded by those who love them and their family. And so the opportunity that we might be able to contribute to the health of kids in Tangipahoa Parish is quite humbling. We're very excited. I'm going to have one of our physicians, he's a nationally known otolaryngologist, pediatric surgeon that was previously at Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, and then Texas Children's in Houston. We've recruited him here to Louisiana. and he'll talk to you a little bit more about some of the programs. But we believe this is the way we can contribute to North Shore and this part of the community and greater New Orleans, and we're incredibly thrilled and excited and humbled that you guys are partnering with us. I'd like to ask Dr. Ellis Arjman to speak a few moments about this relationship.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to say a few words to you. I just would like to share a couple of thoughts with you. Pediatric specialists are relatively hard to find once you leave major metropolitan areas or communities that have medical schools. So in the state of Louisiana, which has been my home for the last 3.5 years, once you leave metropolitan New Orleans and get beyond Baton Rouge, there are very few specialists in pediatric care, whether surgical or medical. We're very pleased to have had this relationship with North Oaks over the last several years, where we provide specialty care in neonatology, covering their intensive care unit, and also pediatric inpatient care. And we would like to expand that over the next several years to include access in pediatric surgery, orthopedics, urology, pulmonology, cardiology, and some other specialties through the establishment of specialty care clinics in Hammond on the North Oaks campus, to be able to begin to offer surgical services and to expand over time into pediatric rehabilitation and behavioral health. So we have some ambitious plans to bring care closer to home for residents of Tangipahoa Parish and surrounding parishes. By the nature of what we do, most of our patients are young, most of the families are young. Many of them don't have the opportunity to travel to New Orleans for the type of care that we can offer. The greatest concentration of pediatric specialty care providers in the state is at Children's Hospital of New Orleans, and part of our mission is to make that care more easily available to children who reside in other parts of the state. So we are very excited about this opportunity to partner with North Oaks and actively engaged in beginning to plan to deliver those services in Hammond. Thank you.
Bridget, just one comment. I think it's great news for North Oaks and great news for Children's Hospital. Great partnership. I think it's going to be great. Appreciate y'all.
I want to say thank you, but Michelle, before you leave, would you like to introduce your other board members?
Absolutely. So with us tonight is our board chair, Ron Macaluso, Ms. Joyce Lynn Lee, and Mr. Ron Orsi.
Ms. Hyde.
Thank you.
Ms. Hyde, over here, Robbie.
Oh.
Hey, Michelle, I wanted to thank you guys and welcome Children's Hospital to the best parish in the state. We're glad to have you here. I think you've already know, if you've been working here, you know that our citizens, our folks who work here are very dedicated, love Tangipahoa Parish, and the idea that our families will get to stay at home while they're having care. The cost of just going up and down the road, much less having to stay in New Orleans or so forth, be away, is a major factor, like you said. And to have these specialty services are just tremendous for us. And thank you guys for working so hard. Thank you for accepting that challenge with us, and we look forward to a long relationship. Appreciate you.
Our assessor is here. If y'all don't mind, can we move item 6 up from regular business and go ahead and hear that matter so that they can leave if they choose to? Is that okay? All right. Item 6 under regular business, Tangipahoa Parish Council acting as the Board of Review for 2020. 2022.
Good to see everybody again. Once a year event that we have combined. See, Brad, I see you over there.
How you doing, Coach?
No sprints, Coach. No sprints. All right. Yeah, I'm here to present the value of the total assessed value for Tangipahoa Parish for the year 2022. That includes all real and personal property. That value it's pushing $1 billion, just so y'all know. Okay, we've had an increase of 5% of last year's taxes assessed value. The total value for 2022 is $933,482. Way too big a number for me. Kevin,
This is my Chief Deputy, Kevin Rayford. I'll let him do the heavy work.
933,482,000 is where we at, and that's a total increase of about 5%, which I think over the last few years we've been at about 3%. So it's a little bit of an increase over where we've had, which I think everybody here can understand that and appreciate being a little bit more of an increase. And we're very happy where we are. Nice, slow, steady increase.
Since it's not a reassessment year, those increases are probably moderate increases to market value, okay? And so market value, if you own your real estate, you want to hear your value is the potential of going up. So I just wanted to pass that along to y'all. Any questions? Well, we're getting close. Yeah, I'm thinking that maybe next year.
If we have another 5% increase, we would be really, really close.
So I'm going to keep Kevin with me because he's the only one that he can read those big numbers. I have a hard problem with the big numbers. But anyway, proud of our parish. People are moving here. They like living here. Like Robbie said, Tangipahoa Parish is the place to be. And I really do believe that. I know I'm a transplant, but I don't plan on going anywhere. And I've got a great staff. Plan on doing this for a little longer. And maybe at some point you'll be seeing Kevin a little more often. Okay?
Thank you,
got it.
Junior.
Thank y'all.
All right, the next item under public input is discussion of the carbon sequestration project. We're going to let Representative Bill Wheat speak first.
Before I get started on that, first of all, thank you. I appreciate Chairman Hyde and the council for allowing me to be here to talk about a very important issue. But before I do that, I'd just like to speak a little bit about what we heard from our hospital here in Tangipahoa Parish and the impacts of how that's going to have on our citizens within our community. I think are going to be exponential. I think it's going to be a great thing. Michelle and her staff has worked hard on projects like this to bring health services to our community, and I applaud them very much for the actions that they've taken in pairing with Children's Hospital. I think it's going to be very impactful for us. On the issue that we're dealing with tonight, and I think in a very short period of time, we've all had to educate ourselves on carbon capture and sequestration. I'll call it CCS. And begin to address some of the questions that are being put forward. I'd like to thank the other folks that are here with us tonight that's going to help further this discussion, especially the citizens of our area that's taken upon themselves to raise awareness of this critical issue that we're concerned with. I think they're bringing this forward for discussion absolutely has generated a healthy debate that needs to take place. My comments tonight are going to be from two different aspects. And one is going to be as state representative, and the other is from a local impact, that community in which I live on the south end of Tangipahoa Parish. And the first part of it is dealing with the state impacts and how we as legislators, what our role is. Look, CCS, or carbon capture, is a global issue. The technology is occurring around the world. In the United States and now in Louisiana. It's a massive topic. It's being debated at every level of government. The science behind the technology, the pros and cons of its use, tons of articles and research, thousands of experts, geologists, scientists, environmentalists, and industry experts are all weighing in on this topic. These issues are, although relatively new to Louisiana, is not a new topic for discussion. It's been had across the world for quite a long period of time. And the issues are complex, and they're very scientific in nature, so it's hard to understand a lot about the processes of what we're dealing with in today's world. I'm not going to share my expertise on that because it's extremely limited, and we'll leave that to the experts to present their views on that scientific aspect of it. What I do believe is that carbon capture and sequestration is an issue that's here to stay with us for a while, and we as elected officials, our citizens, are absolutely going to have to be involved with the process as to what makes sense on the state level and also on what makes sense to us on a local level. Is CCS a good thing or a bad thing? What are the challenges to its implications? Is it going to be the answer to the problems that is proposed to fix? And most importantly, is it safe, and what are the long-term detrimental effects? Guys, I'm not standing here with all the answers for you that's going to make this an easy discussion tonight. I don't have them. I think that what the process that we're undertaking is absolutely necessary and hopefully will get us to a better understanding of this technology and help direct our path forward. As a state representative, from my perspective, we as a legislature and legislators are charged with coming up with rules and regulations that govern this new industry that's in front of us. It's important that as we do that we are guided by some very important principles. First and foremost, we're charged with the protection of our citizens, the assets, the natural resources, and the environment of our state of Louisiana. At the same time, it's balanced by other factors, including our state's economy, our competitiveness with other states, how we bring jobs to our families that deserve a good paying job, which ultimately keeps families within our borders of Louisiana. And so all those factors are balancing acts that we as individuals will all have to participate in to come up with, and people have differing opinions, to have healthy debate on how we find the answers to those complex questions. From a legislative standpoint, and I want to talk a little bit about the history of where we came from and let you know where we may be headed. In 2009, and I'm going to pull out my phone because it's actually got the title of what I want to tell you there, and bear with me just a moment in order to do that. Am I on a time clock? No, that's good. All right. Hold on. All right, here we go. And so in 2009, the state legislature began the process of creating a framework of legislation for CO2 capture as an industry. Laws were enacted and on the information that was available at the time in 2009. Most of this legislation was modeled with the current legislation as it pertained to oil and gas industry and exploration within the state of Louisiana. That particular act was called in 2009 the Louisiana Geologic Sequestration of Carbon Dioxide Act. And that legislation was based on the information that we had privy to at the time. I was not there in the legislature in 2009, but my predecessors actually came up with that initial framework that we are actually starting to work from. In 2020, just not very long after I was elected, we had another piece of legislation that was brought forward to the state of Louisiana. It was Senate Bill 353 by Senator Sharon Hewitt. And there's been a lot of talk about this piece of legislation, about what it does and what it pertains to, and there's probably been some confusion on what actually that it's not credited for. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that, because when we dealt with this piece of legislation in the Baton Rouge, there were no specific projects that was related to that Senate Bill 353. We were talking in broad terms about how to regulate an industry within the borders of the state of Louisiana based on previous legislation that was already enacted. And so there were several things that took place with that piece of legislation. And again, we'll have the opportunity to talk about that. I'm not going to go into that piece of legislation in its entirety. If we had questions about it, I'd be glad to try to answer it for you. But it was a tweaking of some of the rules and regulations concerning carbon capture and sequestration. But again, no projects was attached to that when we had the discussion, especially not our precious Lake Marpaw, and I want to make that clear. The process of crafting the guidelines for CCS regulation is an evolving one, and it will be an ongoing as we continue to learn about the industry and its impacts upon our state and the localities where these projects are ultimately going to occur. Like most states, Louisiana is responding to a rapidly developing industry that will require everyone's attention. And legislation will be coming forth as new information is shared and we learn more about what's happening with this particular industry. I will tell you, in the initial conversations, there's a lot of different points of view that as state legislators, we need to take into account when we're coming up with rules and guidelines on how to craft legislation around an entire state. Some areas of the state, and the testimony that was presented to us was absolutely excited about carbon capture projects going to their area because of the economic impact. How do they transform some of the industries where the future maybe looks like it's going to have to change to meet the demands of what is happening on the global discussion? And so those areas realize that in order for their economic stability to be maintained, that they're absolutely excited about these projects. In other areas, as we are going to hear tonight, that's absolutely 180 degrees opposite of what those communities may share with you and with information. And that's okay. We all have differing opinions, and we all want to make sure what makes sense to us on a local level is how we decide how projects go forward. So that's kind of my spiel on what is charged to us from a state level. We have to craft legislation that makes sense to everyone in that whole quagmire of decisions that we're charged with doing. From a local perspective, as a resident of South Tangipahoa Parish who's lived there all my life and enjoyed Lake Pontchartrain, I have a camp on Tangipahoa River. I know what it means to our community. I know the importance of that natural resource that we all have learned to love and enjoy, and a lot of us make our living with in that area. And again, I'd like to again thank the folks that are here tonight to express their concerns about what's happening in their community, because it's important to them, and for those folks who don't understand the passion that they have exhibited in their discussions thus far, it may be difficult for you to understand that unless you are from the area where you grew up with and you've experienced all the beauties and the riches of what our area has to offer. And I will also tell you that it's not without reason that there's questions being brought forward that we need answers to make sure that what we're doing in the future is right for what we are making decisions on today. I think many of you understand the historical things that have happened in our swamps in southern Tangipahoa Parish. Not too many generations ago, we had the deforestation of the cypress industry that totally wiped out beautiful stands of cypress in our swamps. And it was done from a standpoint at that point in time without realizing what the implications were for future generations to come. I think we're living with that impact now in our area down there as we go forward, and we probably will continue to do so for many, many years. And so the questions are justified and right for us to ask the right questions to make sure that because it empowers us to make sure that what we do doesn't have similar effects on generations to come. And that's the charge that we all have to keep in mind. So what does it boil down to me? What are my questions concerning this as a citizen of southern Tangipahoa Parish that enjoys this beauty that we have? And I'm going to list some questions here, and I'm not going to try to answer them for you. I think the folks that will come behind me will try to do some answering themselves, and I'm sure there'll be future discussions that will have to be had as it relates to carbon sequestration and how we go forward. So some of the questions that I have are this. What are both the short-term and especially the long-term detrimental effects that these projects will have? Is it safe for both our citizens? Is it safe for our lakes and our marshes? It's important that we answer those things. What is the plan for expansion of the projects into other adjacent areas? Lake Pontchartrain, Joyce Wildlife Management area, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Who's responsible for monitoring the projects as they go forward, and for how long are they responsible for monitoring those projects? What happens in an emergency situation, and who and what is affected if such an incident occurs? How will these projects be decommissioned in the future, and what's left after the industry walks away from them? What is their responsibilities to make sure that what they do, if it happens, is handled appropriately? How will the projects, and this is a very important one, and this is the single most common question that I've been asked about the project, and that is, why the lake? I see you shaking your head, Joey. I know that we've had discussions and we've had some conversations about this. You know, I think it seems an opportunity for something to go wrong more exponentially higher than a land project would. Look at what happens in our lake. We have an ecosystem full of life and vigor with crabs and shrimp and fish and all the things that are there. The boating safety issues that are brought to our attention because structures are put into the lake out there. The water quality, what's it doing to it, on both the surface and the underneath of our lake? You know, I've heard an explanation as to why the lake is brought forward at this particular time was that it's a one-owner entity and it's easier for the process to go forward. I want to tell you, that's not a good answer. And a project going forward should not be easy in this capacity. It should be vetted and should be understood completely, and all the answers should be done up front, and it shouldn't be done out of expediency or that you're only dealing with one owner. Another very important question, and I think this pertains to our council here, and that is, what are the options or rights do local governments have to influence the projects within our jurisdiction? And that's going to be something that you as council members potentially may have to help and answer with, and how we craft. I suspect that this is one item that's going to require some legislation on a state level to make sure that we understand whose role it is to do what, how it affects the local communities in which we live. And so I expect that to happen. What are the financial incentives for them to decide if a project goes forward within your jurisdiction? What comes back to Tangipahoa Parish or Livingston Parish or Ascension Parish? What do we get out of the deal to have these projects within our borders? What are the negative financial impacts do these projects have on local governments? Just thinking of a few examples that's been brought to my attention. Our local fire stations and the extra burden that it may put on them to respond to any emergency that may be there. Our boat launches are maybe filled with capacity already, and how does that push other people that want to use our areas to enjoy their activities? What is the cleanup, and who helps mitigate that? And et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of things that, from a financial impact, that I think absolutely has to be looked at. And then lastly, what about our local landowners and their rights in this argument? And what are the implications that are important to them? I tell you, I'm very concerned about how these projects were rolled out and how much information was shared with both the public and me as an elected official. I will tell you, I've voiced my displeasure already about the fact that we were not educated, and certainly the public was not educated about what was going to happen within our communities. I think it was poorly done, and I think there's a lot of catch-up that needs to happen in order for us all to feel comfortable as to where we're going forward with this discussion. I'm concerned a little bit about the advertising of the public notices that were done for the permits that have already been listed. You look, we were dealing with some difficult times in the last few years. You all know what we dealt with the hurricane in Tangipahoa Parish and how information was difficult to come by. And so this issue came about in a timing manner that all of that was advertised during that period of time when perhaps our citizens was not aware of what was going on and didn't get the chance to flush out their questions that they needed to get answers to. COVID absolutely was a part of this process. For us in Baton Rouge, when issues were brought to us, we did not have people in seats behind us as legislators asking the right questions that we needed to have to make decisions on important issues. So a lot of things have taken place in the last couple of years that I think has put questions as to how fast these projects should go forward. As a result of all of what I've said tonight, I'm going to summarize by just saying this. I believe that there are way too many concerns and questions that I personally have that have not been properly vetted to support these projects going forward at this time. The people of our area deserve a better process than what has occurred up to this point. To push forward without a more transparent, a more educational process, I believe would be a tremendous mistake on the part of our industry at this time. The suggestion of a pause in all activity to allow for the discussion, educational opportunities, and a better understanding, I think would be a very wise and prudent move at this point in time. That's what concludes my presentation. I thank you for your interest, and again, thank you for allowing me to be here tonight.
Thank you,
Can I ask one
Representative Week.
question?
Yes, Ms. Coates.
Mr. Bill, so myself and you have had a few conversations about this, but I have all the same questions and all the same concerns that you just mentioned. One of the things as a state rep I'd like to kind of bring is, you know, under the operating agreement with Wildlife and Fisheries, it's like 24,000 acres of the lake, and almost 9,000 is in Tangipahoa Parish. And like you said, if they're putting stuff under the ground that's considered Tangipahoa Parish, and we benefit nothing, you know, but we are taking all the risk, and we're having local people that are losing like crab pots and lines and, you know, fishing that, you know, how is that fair?
Yep.
You know, so.
Councilman Coates, again, I think you hit on some of the same concerns that I have there about where we are in those debates that are taking place. I just don't think we've had enough time to answer that on the state level. And we need legislation to help us clarify where we're going in those discussions and how this pertains to our local entities. And your examples are right on target as to why we just need that pause in activity to make sure that we get it right. Because again, our future generations depend upon us to get this right. And I'm not saying it's wrong or right. I don't know all the answers to this technology, and we're going to have some testimony tonight, I'm sure, that's going to talk about the safety and how projects are done in other areas, and that's fine and good. But we're talking about something that's extremely important to us as citizens of Tangipahoa Parish, and we need to answer that. We don't want it to be answered somewhere else and then us find out that it's not appropriate for our situation. So thank you for that question.
Thank you.
I have one question too. You mentioned pause.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit more about that. That's driven from the legislature? I'm just trying to understand that.
I think for the most part, it does a couple things. For the public, it speaks to put a pause on some of the permits that have already been issued, back up and make sure that they were done in the manner that gives public input the right to ask the right questions that they have at the time when the permits were issued, one thing. Secondly, how it pertains to legislative activity that may need to catch up to where we are in this new industry that we're dealing with.
Do you have questions?
Thank you for coming. Everything you touched on was what I'm gonna be touching on later tonight, once Air Product gives their talk. It's important. This is big. A lot of people, I have an invested interest. I have a camp on Tangipahoa River, so it leads right to that lake. 30-something years, my kids swam and, you know, played in that lake, and this is important that y'all get this legislation passed to try to halt this till we get some answers, because there's just a lot of questions that have not been answered.
And Joey, again, it's complex because, you know, for the communities in parts of the state that absolutely need projects and want projects to go forward, if you craft legislation that is so restrictive that it fits us, but it didn't fit them, then we fail there as well. So it's complex, and it's going to take a lot of work on very people who are going to dive into the details of where we're going with this and try to get it as close to where we want it to be as possible. I will tell you, no piece of legislation that we've done already or that we're going to do is probably going to be perfect, because the industry is changing. And it's going to be changing in the next few years in a very rapid pace. And so we will have to respond to that, both as a community, as representatives on the parish level, and as state elected officials.
We appreciate that. The main thing is that we get the local reps, all the local reps and the three parishes get together and get up there and fight for these people, because this is important. This is our future. And they talk about 50 years from now. We're not going to be here 50 years. And I don't think anybody in this room will probably be here 50 years from now.
Again, the folks that are here are passionate about what their issues and questions are, and they have a right to be, because a lot is at stake for their livelihoods. When we look across the horizon of Lake Pontchartrain and Lake Maurepas, we want to see something that we can be proud of, all right? And so all of those factors are important to consider in this discussion. Thank you very much.
One more comment, Bill.
Yeah.
And that's for the record. I think it's Air Products that has a permit to do 2 injection ports, is that correct?
Yeah, and
Yes.
again,
Just for the record.
Councilman Vial, I would prefer maybe to let them speak to a little bit more about that. My understanding is that there is 2 injection wells associated with that project, but rather than me give you information that maybe, I would prefer that be handled in that
Appreciate
manner.
it. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you
Senator
very
Wheat.
much.
Okay, we have several people that want to speak. I just want to say a few things first. When this came to the parish council and to our parish government, the project was already permitted. And I've had a lot of people call me. I see a lot of my friends in the back of the room. We have a camp in Manchac. My daughter's almost 19. She's grown up in that water swimming, and I was pulling her on a tube. So this is very personal to me as well. But we, as a parish, did not know about this until it was already permitted. And a lot of you have called me and asked me, you know, why isn't the council doing anything? So really, there's nothing that the council could do. When we found out, it was pretty much already a done deal. So I'm going to let each of you speak for 3 minutes. I just ask that you address the council when you're speaking. If someone has already gotten up and spoken and said exactly what you're going to say, I would ask you maybe to not speak just for the sake of time. But I'm going to call these in no certain order. I don't know how they were turned in, so it's just random. The first one I have is Mr. Mel Lamp. When you come to the podium.
My first question would be, could you let them present the project first so we know what we're going to comment on? And then we have to go into our comments?
This isn't a debate. It's not going to be. Sir, would you, are you Mr. Lamp?
Yes.
Well, please come to the podium and give us your name and address.
My name is Melvin Lamp, and I live on Weinberger Road in Ponchatoula, which is on, we actually, our acreage falls off at the marsh, and we are right touched north of the land trust, or whatever it is there. And I still would like one of the councilmen to make a motion to let these people present what they're doing, because these people do not know. Our councilman didn't even know if they have 1 wellhead or 2 wellheads, permits already. Y'all didn't know about the permit, so let's find out what they're wanting to do.
Excuse me, but that's not correct. I did
Pardon?
know. I did know there were 2 wells.
I'm sorry, I said Mr. Weed said he didn't want to comment on it. Okay, all right. Well, I mean, I hear rumors, I look for something. I don't know if it's a $1.2 billion project, or where they're getting the sequestration money to buy this from, or where they're selling the credits to, and that's the point. As the council, you said you did not know, so let's let them present and see what they're saying before we present what our feelings are about this.
Can I say something?
And that's a simple, just reverse.
Ms. Coates?
I don't think tonight in this meeting, this venue, is where we need to have all of this. I, myself, am totally passionate about this, of what's going on. I have twice asked Air Products for a public hearing meeting in Ponchatoula for the South End twice. I spoke to Dr. Wheat this morning. He was going to help also speak to them and arrange a meeting for us. They've had a public meeting in Reserve, and they've had a public meeting in Springfield. They're having another meeting tomorrow night in Livingston. So I would like a public meeting, specifically the whole meeting on this project, to answer your, I'd like them to give the presentation like they did. I did attend the meeting in Springfield. They had a presentation, and the public got to ask questions and learn more about it. So, you know, I'm trying not to be disrespectful, but
No,
I think,
that's all right, okay.
I
would
think we
ask-
need more time.
I would ask that the parish council go to the Ponchatoula meeting or be at one of these meetings so y'all are all familiar with it too, because they're not going to have one at each one of the districts.
Right.
All right, can I have my 3 minutes, please? I'm sorry to get distracted. My questions in general about this, it's easy to Google up a world map of where these places are, and a few of them that are already in place. One of them is right here, and there are about 7 around the world. So we're really going to be the good big dump for this operation, whatever it is so far. These are the regional opportunities that they show for sequestration. And another question I have, which deals with carbonic acid. When you talk about the effects of this, if it escapes or not, it's carbonic acid, as they're saying, carbon going into the oceans is starting to stop or slow down the progression of shellfish and shells and bone structures of the ocean critters. You can look it up on the internet, and it was from NPR. If you can't trust them, who can you trust? Where the emissions, why they're choosing, if they've gone through all of this, Mr. Wheat, I would ask, did you vote for it, and what are we going to be able to do to pause it, rather than saying the rest of the state did not go with it? What options do we have? Because regardless of what Tangipahoa Parish says, are we going to be able to slow this down, stop this, change it, or what? Why waste my breath? Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, sir. Are you trying to project something to our TV? No, that is not allowed. You didn't turn in a form to speak, and you cannot put something on our TV. I'm sorry? Well, you need to go fill out a form. And what is your name? Okay, if you'd like to speak, you can fill a form out, but I don't appreciate you trying to project something to our screen in the middle of a meeting. Okay, if you'd like to speak, go fill out a form and bring it to our clerk. Yes. The next one is Ed Lindgraft. Please state your name and address.
Yeah, my name is Ed Landgraf, 21011 Waterfront East in Marpaw. I'm the chairman of an industry organization called CAMO, Coastal and Marine Operators. The uniqueness about our industry organization is we have oil and gas, and we have environmental interests that we've worked very hard to cultivate those relationships, specifically Lake Pontchartrain Basin Foundation or the Pontchartrain Conservancy, Louisiana Wildlife Federation, the National Estuary Program, and others. So I find myself in a little bit of a quandary because I do feel that industry and environment can coexist, but our main focus at CAMO is safety, and that's what we do. We have about 20 oil and gas company members, one of which, I'm not going to name the name, but is represented tonight. And I would just like to say that our NGO partners, our environmental partners, has contacted me multiple times with concerns about this because that's what we do. We're a safety organization, and I can, as this clock ticks down, I can just tell you that there's a right way to do things and there's a wrong way to do things. And there's some transparency issues, and when you have those transparency issues, people start thinking what they want to think, whether it's fact or reality. I've asked the company if you've got a stakeholder engagement plan, a non-technical risk plan, how those have developed. And to echo what the state representative said, you know, you need to have the public have a voice and understand really what the process is. If you need to know about safety of oil and gas infrastructure, that's what we do, right? And that's why I'm here, because we do have those environmental NGO partners. So I would also like to add that, officially I'm neutral, because I don't want to prejudge one thing or the next. But at the end of the day, you've got to be able to communicate and understand what your stakeholder needs are, and you've got to be able to address those questions. It's unfair to put me in this situation, that I get these calls to answer questions that I don't know how to answer. It's unfair to the elected officials, in my opinion, to be put into a situation that answer questions that you don't have information on, right? And I'm trying to be fair here to both sides. So that's why I came here tonight, was to be able to say, hey, we're CAMO, Coastal Marine Operators. This is what we do, www.camogroup.org. We're nonprofit, but, we try to find that balance between industry, environment, and specifically marine safety is what we concentrate on. So unless there are no questions, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Landgraf. Next, I have Patrick Lanier.
Yeah, my name's Pat Lanier. I was born in Hammond and raised in Denham Springs. I think you're from Livingston Parish over there. I just want to agree with just about everything my buddy Dr. Bill here said, but if I had to add something, the world's just having growing pains. The CO2 is going to go in the air or somewhere, but if anything comes out of all this, we need some way, if we see a problem, especially somebody like Mr. Pati here is out there fishing, who can he call and say, look, I see 1,000 fish dying, or I see a big bunch of bubbles coming up. People like him's gonna be our monitors, I reckon. But that's what I'd like to see the company do, is to keep an eye on what they're doing. And for y'all to keep an eye on it too, because I'm gonna depend on my buddy Bill Wheeler to watch out for us. That's really all I had to say.
Thank you, Mr. Lanier.
There's a lot of other fishermen down there. I'm not going.
You can. Thank you. All right, Kenyon Bankston. State your name and address.
How y'all doing? I'd like to thank y'all for allowing me to speak tonight. I speak in front of millions of people almost every night, and this is probably the most nervous I've ever been. So, the real reason that we're here is because the community is scared. The community is scared to death. The fishermen and the crabbers back here behind me, their future is very uncertain in all this process. I was on a meeting the other day, a Zoom call meeting with some politicians, Air Products, Southeastern, and Joey, some of the ones was on there. The Southeastern biologist said that our marine life, our fishery life, has a 50-50 chance of survival in Lake Marpaw. 50-50 chance survival, guys. That's unacceptable. That's unacceptable for this group of men back here that make a living out on that lake. We hear the jobs coming into Ascension Parish. We hear all the jobs coming to Ascension. But what's coming to Tangipahoa? What's coming to these guys? We're going to tell them, hey, get your hard hat, get your safety glasses, and go to work for Air Products? This is just absolutely crazy. And I got to thank Mr. Bill for voicing that he wants to put the brakes on this project. I think that's the right thing to do. The brakes need to be put on this project in order for the proper permitting, the community to be aware about this. It's just mind-blowing that a company can just run in and do what they're doing to our lake. It's just unbelievable. And, the people in this parish deserve better than that. The fishermen of our community deserve better than that. And, I have no clue how Air Products feels about this, but I think our elected officials from the state level need to band together and put the brakes on this project to let everybody catch their breath and see. You know, this project ain't about capturing carbon dioxide out of the air, capturing carbon dioxide up and down the river and putting it in a liquid form and pumping it under the lake. This is about taking natural gas, creating blue hydrogen, creating the carbon dioxide. They're going to create the carbon dioxide. They're not going to capture it. And they're going to store the carbon dioxide under our lake. And where's the blue hydrogen sold? Sold to other countries overseas. So, you know, how is that even possible? How are we going to allow that? They're not coming to clean our air. They're actually going to produce the carbon that goes underneath our lake. And that's wrong. That's wrong. This has nothing to do with cleaning the atmosphere. This has everything to do with selling blue hydrogen to other countries overseas. And I appreciate all y'all here tonight. And I think everybody should band together as us, as Louisianans, and come together and say, hey, we need to put the brakes on this project where we can all catch our breath, because nothing has been done proper since day one. Thank y'all.
All right, next we have John Hoover. Hey, John, state your name and address, please.
John Hoover, 11489 Jerusalem Church Road, Hammond, Louisiana. I'd like to say that I've been a commercial fisherman in the blue crab fishery for over 30 years, and these are just a few of my thoughts and concerns that I have. Now, granted, I've been on that lake since I was 2 years old, and I ain't giving away my age, so you can imagine how long that's been. All right, so we have over 30 fishermen who make a living in the seafood industry in Manchac, supplying seafood around Tangipahoa Parish. October to November begins our blue crab westward migration back into Lake Maurepas. They transition back and forth with seasons. So it starts in late October, November through the winter. They'll go out there and they'll winterize. We have great concerns on what seismic activity will have on the migration back into the lake. Also in Lake Maurepas are the Rangia clams. These clams can be found on the bottom of the lake and burrow down into the mud. They are of great importance as filter feeders and purify the waters to enable a healthy estuary and ecosystem. Lake Maurepas is also home to many species of catfish. These fish are a natural resource that make up the seafood industry in Manchac. Many people rely on this resource to feed their families, as during the COVID years, and we all remember what happened with that, it was unbelievable the amount of people that bought fishing licenses and went out and actually put food on the table. So it was a highly sought after food source in those times, and we don't know what the future may hold for us. Also in Lake Maurepas we have manatees and the endangered sturgeon. Ospreys are here in abundance, and the eagles migrate to the lake and nest to have their young, as the lake provides an adequate food source for their survival. Millions of dollars have been granted for restorations for our lakes. So what are we doing here, folks? Are we going to save it or destroy it with the face of this carbon capture project coming down? Final, this carbon capture project process poses many risks for Lake Maurepas. Lake Maurepas has great value as an economic engine for southeast Louisiana. Have we not learned from the mistakes of the past by leveeing the Mississippi River, cutting 1,000-year-old cypress trees that caused coastal crisis? Carbon capture has more risk than gains for Lake Maurepas. This estuary and ecosystem are of great importance for the cycle of life and must be preserved for generations to come. Thank you.
Next, Joe Garofalo.
My name is Joe Gallafor, 47319 Greco Road, Hammond, Louisiana. This is my first parish council meeting, so pardon my nervousness here. I just want to share my heart real quick. Been up since about 3 o'clock this morning, trying to write this down. I feel like I'm speaking for myself and the people of the community of not wanting this. I oppose the carbon capture. First, I would like to thank the Parish Council and people of Tangipahoa Parish for letting me speak, so thank you. Today, I'm here for one reason only, the carbon capture project that is at the beginning stages right now in Lake Maupaw. I would like to present some general knowledge of who I am and what I know. I have been in the petrochemical industry for 20 years as a process tech/operator. The companies I have worked for have given me and my wife a good life. But at 50, I have a 2.5-year-old little girl's future to think about. This parish and surrounding parishes are our futures now, but that may change. No one has any long-term studies that can prove me or all of us that this carbon capture project one day will not have a permanent impact on our way of life here in South Louisiana. Please, everyone, listen to me. I am sharing my heart for our little boys and girls' future. Now look, I'm not claiming to be a biologist, chemist, or an environmentalist. I'm not a tree hugger or part of PETA. I am for people and jobs, but I'm also for our environment. We have to commingle the two. We must secure jobs and protect the environment. We must protect our family's future, not only financially, but also environmentally. Now, what I have said or about to say, I hope I didn't or don't offend anyone. You want to stick a pipe in the ground and extract a natural resource that's been there for thousands of years, like oil or natural gas. You want to run pipelines underground for transportation of a product from one place to the other. That's okay by me. We appreciate the commodities and the jobs that the companies have created for our families and communities. You want to stick a pipe in the ground to send a byproduct deep under our lake because you have no other way to get rid of it. That's not okay. Miles from your complex for one-way ticket through possibly an aqueduct, that's not okay. That's pollution. We don't know what long-term effects this may cause, especially if cathodic protection fails and piping starts to erode under the surface somewhere it should not. Now, my proposal, my pleading to the good people of the Parish Council and people of the parish, please help me, help us, help our community and our neighboring parish to fight, to stop this. Let's get a lawyer involved if that's the only way, because truly in my heart, it is the only way. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Howard, please state your name and address.
Howard Clay Porter, Holden, Louisiana.
Come to the mic, please.
Howard Clay Porter, Holden, Louisiana, 29413 Efferson Road.
Wait, give me your address again.
29410. Yeah, that's right. Okay, y'all gonna have to forgive me because the information I'm about to display to y'all is so vast and overwhelming, I really don't know where to begin. Okay, this is what's already under our earth. The Bayou Corn sinkhole is a result of a chemical plant company that is in cahoots with North Holden right now. They are the cause of the sodium extraction that caused the sinkhole, bottom line. I believe in my heart, from what I've read and from what I've seen and what I've researched, this has nothing to do with putting carbon in the ground. In fact, into the contract, there are loopholes where they can add solvents. I'm gonna let y'all know that. So it's not gonna be just carbon going into the, I don't believe at all. This has to do with osmotic power, brackish water. There's potential energy behind brackish water. And when they take the salt out of it and they get the reaction, they're gonna put the salt back into the water and it's gonna raise the salinity. There's gonna be a 100% mortality rate within an 11-year period to every one of our cypress trees, bottom line. No more life in the lake. There will be no more crabs. There will be no more fish. None. It's over with. You'll see nothing but structures that look devilly, just crazy. 20 of them, something out on Maupaw. Not only that, there's no incentives for y'all. What, in 20 years, stuff starts to rise? Because they don't put it in canisters. It's going in the strata.
Sir, you're to address the council.
It's going in the strata. It's not going in canisters, okay? This has to do with also graphene oxide. They're gonna put methane with the carbon, the CO2, and then they're gonna put copper nanoparticles. They got all the lists on how they do it. The salt, sodium, mineral that is under that lake, once it's extracted, it's over with. They're gonna use it for electrolysis as an isotope to make green hydrogen. They don't care about us, y'all. Y'all keep that in mind whenever and anybody that votes, when you see a vote among this panel, you stand up and say nay. Every
Sir,
vote.
you have to address the council.
I'm sorry. I get what you're saying, but I need to tell these people, you know?
That's not what we're here for
I
tonight.
got you. So if there's any votes from this point on, folks behind me, you need to say nay to every bit of it. Stand up and say nay. Listen close when the votes go down. You've got to say nay. You must stand up and say nay. That's what that's.
Thank you, sir. All right, the last one is Stephanie Campbell. Please state your name and address.
Stephanie Campbell, 14393 Gibson Road, Marpaw. My name is Stephanie, but the details concerning my address would depend on whether you're referring to the address within the purchase agreement I signed preceding the 14 years I have paid taxes in Livingston Parish, or the 3 variations of that address filed on 3 different survey maps approved without my consent or knowledge. However, that's not my focus today. Today, the concern is your community's map. Were you aware that out of 38,000 something acres of taxable land contained within Livingston Parish, and that's the only parish I've done the map in, but you can look this up for your parish too, nearly 9% of that is disappearing per year. That comes out to roughly 7,000 tax dollars deducted from the budget from Livingston Parish each year. Aside from impacts concerning the security of those that depend on the seafood industry, we face concerns regarding revenue generated from that industry as well. What sort of impacts would you suppose the parish might face financially after agreeing to a process which poses so many unknown risks? What if those people were forced to move on top of that in order to support their incomes? Environmental impacts are often met with opposition from petrochemical industry. However, considering the risks and impacts not yet thoroughly considered or guaranteed to protect other industry and the community that supports petrochem and oil and gas as well, the CPRA has invested $60 million into revitalizing the Lake Marpaw swamp, which will feed fresh water into the lake from the west. These efforts will prevent further degradation of lush cypress and tupelo swamps with countless other species of vegetation from becoming salty and becoming salty grasses. These swamps are what houses the life designed to naturally filter CO2 offsets and provides a large part of influence on the ecosystem that supports marine life for the seafood industry here. There are various articles within this 39-page lease agreement that are contradictory and misleading concerning even the simplest things, such as the very definition of CO2, implications specified regarding the state having the right to drill for oil and gas and other resources should they happen to find them, details concerning the partnership created by the state and Air Products, as well as the details that pose loads of other exceptions. I strongly urge all the public officials and everyone in the public to read this 39-page of word salad so you don't wind up without water and being forced to move like I am. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. At this time, we'll have Air Products come and give a presentation.
Excuse me. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to the council. I have Wayne Rowe. I'm the Director of Subsurface Technology for Air Products, and my responsibility within Air Products is specifically on the development of the sequestration, which is very relevant here for this evening. There have been a number of broad and expansive questions over every aspect of this project. We have just begun this journey. We don't have permits to do anything beyond just the initial phases of this project. And so what I'd like to do this evening is to give an overview for the council of the project itself, not to answer the many very, very excellent questions that have been posed here, and not to avoid any of them. We will address every single question that comes up to the best of our ability. I feel the passion of everybody in here. We've had many discussions so far with a lot of the citizens, and we expect for that to continue. There's passion for Maurepas, there's passion for everything that this project brings. I can also assure you that Air Products people like myself and my colleagues and everybody working on this project also have passion as well. We want to develop a great project that the state of Louisiana is proud of. Beyond the lake, there's been talk about or bringing up the fact that we all have children that will be trying to grow and thrive in the future. Yes, there's issues around the lake, but there's greater issues too that we all need to confront. And that's why Air Products is bringing this project forward. This is a new way of doing things. It's new technology. It's much more advanced than what's been currently in operation. And we want the chance to prove to you, to them, to everybody in the state that it can be done perfectly, responsibly, and will be something that the whole state is proud of. So with that, I'd just like to give everybody, this is just a PowerPoint presentation of the project itself, with the anticipation that there'll be many more discussions going forward to answer all these very good questions. So with that, I'd like to advance to the first slide. So these are bullet points, but I want to bring the personal part of it. This is a project that Air Products has brought forth to the state of Louisiana, actually quite some time ago, where we would like to build a blue energy complex with the latest technology that will put the state of Louisiana at the forefront of this new generation of how to produce power, how to transport trucks and ships and trains and other new uses of power, where the exhaust is water vapor. It's not smoke, it's not particulates. So to do that, one of the main components to make this truly zero carbon, and it truly is zero carbon, a main component of this project is to capture, compress, and turn into a liquid all of the CO2 that's produced by the plant, and then sequester it safely in the deep subsurface. So, and personally, the reason that I'm with Air Products now, I have been a developer, technically, of 3 of the operating sites in North America today. And I know that it can be done safely and securely, but there's certainly a lot of questions going forward. But it is proven technology. It is working in 29 sites around the world, not a few, but 29. There's never been leakage yet in any of these projects, so it can be done safely. Now, the first thing that we're going to do, and this is part of the permitting process that we're going through, the first thing that we need to do is to survey the subsurface under the pore space that we've acquired to develop this project. And another thing that I will say, it was my team that selected the area that we feel is the safest to sequester the CO2, and I'll show about that in a upcoming slide. Please advance to the next. So I think we all know what CO2 is and why it's relevant. It's It's not toxic, it's not flammable, it's something that every time we exhale CO2, it's in Coke, it's something that the reason it's so important to be concerned about CO2 is the effect that it has in the atmosphere. So all of the emissions that are, or the CO2 that's going into the atmosphere today, it has this greenhouse effect that is the reason why there's the emphasis in reducing the amount of CO2 that goes in the atmosphere, because the potential impact that it has on global temperatures. Next slide, please. So what is carbon sequestration? And that's my expertise. And so I'd like to maybe dispel some of the misconceptions just around sequestration itself. So we, in the illustration here, we will be capturing the CO2 that's produced when we produce the hydrogen that the plant will make, compress it to a liquid, transport it to the site, which is partially up in this area, and I'll talk about why that is, and pump it deep into the subsurface. And yes, there will be injection wells, and I'll talk about those as well. And they'll go 8,000 feet below Lake Maurepas, and we will be pushing liquid CO2, which dissolves in the brine that's in the subsurface, up to 6,000 feet. So there'll be 6,000 feet of rock between the top of our sequestration and the surface, the groundwater, and Lake Maurepas. So there's, if you can imagine the state capitol, how tall that is, 30 times up is the amount of rock that's between our sequestration interval and the surface. So, there's the chance that CO2 would leak that far through that amount of rock is absolutely minuscule. And one way to visualize what sequestration is, because it's a liquid, what we're injecting into, or we intend to, and in other projects, is sandstone. So envision a pail of sand was saturated with water and dripping liquid CO2 into it. It just dissolves into the brine. It's very difficult, if you wanted to get it back out. So it stays in there, it disperses. We understand how far it goes. We control that within our permitted area. Advance to the next slide, please. So why here? And that's one of the prevailing questions that I've heard over and over, why here? And I might need to, it might be helpful if I can address the slides themselves, but I had a team of geologists and engineers, both within Air Products and within the oil and gas industry, that were asked to find the ideal geologic setting for sequestration in an area attainable by the attainable meaning not too long a transport to wherever the site was. And so we looked at a site that was 65 miles east to west, 45 miles north to south, with the south border based, centered on Donaldsonville. And that's what we see here. And I'll step to the screen if I may, and I'll try and project my voice. So Donaldsonville is here. And so, we went through a process of identifying all of the,
Excuse me, you can actually bring this with you if you'd like to bring the mic over.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you just have to speak into the mic. There you go.
Okay, I thought it was wire. Thank you. So we looked at all of the features either in the subsurface or in the surface that would present hazards, we call them geohazards, to the site. And so the first thing that we looked at, all these white dots are existing oil and gas wells that go through our confining formations, actually below, deeper than our site. We put a 1 mile radius around each of those wells as a no-go zone. We also looked, and you probably can't see it too well on the big screen, but there are a whole network of blue lines. Those are what's called faults. So those are giant cracks in the subsurface that if they're in our zone or go through the confining zone, that could be a way for CO2 to leak out of our confining formation. So we wanted to stay a mile on either side of any fault. We eliminated those areas. The pink blotches are salt domes. We wanted to stay far away from salt domes because they add complexity and problems for the security of the sequestration. And so that left us with that area right there and right up there at the top of Lake Maurepas. Those are the areas that had what was left when we eliminated all those other areas. And so when I recommended from my team that these are the safest areas within the environment, within this area for sequestration, that's why. It was absolutely not because there was single ownership. It was, our main focus was on the security and safety of the sequestration. Next slide, please. So the first thing that we need to do to investigate this, and this is part of the permitting process, to validate everything that we saw based on data that we had from oil and gas exploration in the area, we need to get our own data specifically in those areas. So the first thing we need to do is create a very detailed geologic picture of the subsurface. And we do that with what's called a 3D seismic survey. Those have been going on in this area for the last 70 years. There's been a number of seismic surveys taken on Lake Maurepas over the years. We've acquired a lot of that data. It's targeted and focused on deeper horizons for oil and gas. We need higher precision, and we need to focus on the seismic survey on the area that we're going to sequester in. And so our current schedule is to initiate the seismic survey in October to acquire that data. Next slide, please. Yes?
When you say a seismic survey, does that mean like... When you say a seismic survey, that's basically like a test well that or drill down?
I'll talk about that. Okay. Yeah, so there will be 2 test wells, and the seismic survey is where we place sources of energy, a blanket across, or dynamite, yes. Yes.
We can't have discussion from you guys, sorry.
He's got to make a point, make it plain and simple.
Okay.
He's going to use dynamite.
Yeah, there's actually three ways to do it. There's vibricize, where are big trucks that vibrate but shake the land. Another way, this is how it's done in the transition zone and offshore, is air guns. And then the third way is to plant dynamite in the not deep in the subsurface, 60 feet below the bottom of the mud line in the case of Maurepas. Now, how this is done, it's very routine. It's regulated in the state by Wildlife and Fish. As long as the The charges are 60 feet or more below the mud line and 20 pounds of dynamite or less. It's been shown that there will be absolutely no impact whatsoever on people, on wells, water wells, fish, anything on the surface. Now, we did our analysis of what was needed for the amount of energy that these charges need to give, and we determined that 5.5 is all we need at a pound per dynamite per charge. Now, the total amount of, and those will be planted 60 feet below the bottom of the water line. So if you can just picture 60 feet, that's 6 stories, a 5-pound dynamite charge. And we will, to minimize the impact on the lake, we're dividing it into 6 sections. We'll spend about a month laying out the geophones that listen to the energy and the charges, and then we'll go through about a 2 to 5 day period of sequentially, one at a time, shooting each one of these charges until we've gone through the whole area, and then we'll pick all that up, move it to the next area, lay it all out, one by one, shooting the charges, acquiring this data, and then in the time intervals there, so we'll start, the plan is to start at the southeast corner of the lake from October into November, move over to the southwest side in November, and so on, and sequentially go through. Now, that doesn't mean that the part that we're working in is completely off limits. It's just we're putting the geophones in the charges every 100 to 200 feet, and there'll be boat corridors for boating, but it's not like there's going to be a chain link fence around where we're operating either.
I have a question about that, Mr. Wayne.
Yes.
I'm over here. So you're sectioning off each section. Is the boat corridor going to be that entire section for that time period, or it's going to be smaller as you work?
Well, the entire lake outside of the section that we're working in is completely open. And then if there is a common boat lane in that section, then we'll have that completely devoid of any. We use cane poles to mark where the geophones are and the shot points. So at any given time, 5/6 of the lake will be completely open and will just be in one section. Plus, we're going from October into the end of March. So we timed this so it would have as little impact on recreation, commercial fishing, and impact on the environment there. Next question, or slide, please. So I think I described this. So this goes through the process which I already described. So one shot at a time, in sections 60 feet below the surface, and then the actual shooting of the charges is just for a few days each month. Next question, or slide. Test wells. So yes, in addition to the seismic, we also need to drill 2 test wells, one in the south part of the lake and one in the north part of the lake. And those will go to acquire rock samples or core of the rock itself so we can get those characteristics. We'll be doing very detailed, sophisticated geophysical well logging, and then also taking fluid samples at key places so we understand the chemistry of the injection area, and then also potential sources of drinking water, and so we do that as well. 8,000 to 9,000 feet, depending where they are. So there'll be one in the south and one in the north. Next slide. So this shows where they are. Now, the yellow highlighted figures there point to where they are in the lake, and then the dotted black line. So to drill this well, we have a rig, a regular oil and gas rig mounted on a barge, and it'll come from Homa, actually, to in through the South Pass, and then follow those dotted lines. Where it's solid, we'll need to do some prop washing to clear out to make the channel low and not deep, to have enough depth to bring the barge in. And then we've also identified a number of stumps and logs and things that need to be taken out. Southeastern Louisiana will be studying those stumps and logs, and then we'll give them to the wildlife and fish.
Excuse me,
Yes.
how deep will y'all be dredging?
So,
And how wide of an area?
yeah, so first of all, the total amount of disturbance is less than 40,000 cubic meters, or yards, which puts it in the minor disturbance and into the programmatic permit area. So no more than a few feet at any low spot that's encountered.
So we're talking about, the lake's only 6, 8 foot at best. The question is how wide, how deep, and
So
how
it does
long?
vary depending on where we are in the lake. I can send you a cross-section that shows how deep, that's what we had to provide to the Army Corps of Engineers in order to get, and the Office of Coastal Management, in order to get their approval. But for the most part, the dispersion of the soil is anywhere between a half a foot to, at most, maybe 1 to 1.5 feet. We're not, and we're only disturbing it, half a foot on either side of the channel. We're not, blowing sediment everywhere. We're keeping it to very limited. We know how big the barge is. We have an exact path that we're following. So, we tried to minimize the impacts. One of the things that we did have to do, though, is we did have to go through and remove a lot of contacts through the pass and through on the Pontchartrain side and on the Maurepas side. We removed 60-foot long old cypress trees that have just been sitting in there, causing problems in the pass. So we donated those actually to Wildlife and Fisheries, back to them, because that's valuable wood, obviously, to the community. So, but really, as Wayne said, our
Basically,
impacts
it's
are so minimal.
minimal dredging then.
Minimal dredging. It's mostly prop washing. If you look at the drawing where it's the thicker line, that's really only where we're dredging. Sure, Kim Goslin.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Next slide. Yeah, so as Kim said, it actually, in some ways, improves the lake. There are areas where there have been stumps and logs that have been put there that could cause damage and so on. So, and then next slide, a touch on some of the local benefits. And so any pipeline or wells located in Tangipahoa Parish will be subject to annual property taxes. Additionally, our products would have to pay parish sales and use tax on the prices of materials, equipment, and supplies used to construct the pipeline and the wells. And I can tell you that the cost of our monitoring and injection wells are about 4 times higher than your typical oil and gas well for the additional well construction requirements. Air Products is committed to bringing hiring locally across all areas of the project, and that includes Tangipahoa Parish. There'll be 170 permanent jobs with a $15.86 million annual payroll, and 2,000 construction jobs over the construction period. Southern Louisiana workers have, so one of there are so many reasons why Louisiana is getting so much focus on this sequestration activity. First of all, the geology is perfect. You've got thousands and thousands of feet of sediments below and above that act as shock absorbers to the pressure. So pressure is distributed widely, so you have very little to none induced seismicity. It's thick. It's just ideal geology, but you also have a great workforce that has everything that we're doing to develop the sequestration is borrowed, it's repurposed technology from oil and gas. And so there has been oil and gas exploration in Louisiana for 100 years. There's been seismic acquisition for 70-some years. There's been pipelines constructed with the workforce in Louisiana for 100 years. And so it has a very rich and vibrant professional workforce to draw from. Yes.
Question. Have the test wells been permitted yet?
Yes, and have we actually received? So these are they're permitted as Class 5 underground injection control wells, but that's so we can construct the wells to Class 6, which is for sequestration, to make sure that everything that we do as far as wells are at the highest standards. Kim?
It was a joint permit application between the Office of Coastal Management and the Army Corps of Engineers.
For the test wells?
For the test wells.
Okay.
Mr. May?
I don't know how much more your presentation you got, but.
I think that's it.
I can say this much. Why the lake, I'm going to finish my question first, my statement. Why the lake? Why not the marsh? Or better than that, we don't want it at all in the lake or the marsh. But if these companies are producing this carbon, why don't they store it where they're producing it? Why does it have to be transported into our beautiful lake that was God-made? It wasn't a man-made lake. It was created way before we came here. And it just doesn't make good sense to come in there and start disrupting something that is natural. Why they can't store it on land? If y'all doing it all over the world, all over the states, why does it have to be in that waterway? I know you got a good logical explanation, but it just don't make good common sense to the common people.
Well, so the reason why we selected it is for the reasons that I described, and part of the reason why it was such a good site is the fact that it was on a lake and there's only a few oil and gas wells in the very western side, and then there were a few small areas off the lake, and one that we secured the pore space for as well that's kind of bisects the airline highway in the marsh area. But to develop a site like this in where you'd have to put a canal or a road or something like that would be far more environmentally destructive than on the lake. And one thing that I neglected to point out is, so for the test wells, the structure around the well is 7 feet by 16 feet. So if you put two king-size beds together, that's a platform for each well. There's going to be 2 test wells, and then the maximum number of wells that it would take to develop the site is 20 or less total, with
Please don't outburst.
and that was done with the geologic models. It was constructed so far in the most advanced simulation technology it's available today, and so and our injection site that I helped construct in Decatur, Illinois is similar size and capacity of what we would put there per well. And then also in outside of Estevan, and then another one in Richardson, North Dakota. So we've developed these, we've designed them, and now they're producing in there. If you visited the site, you'd be very underwhelmed with what it.
On a second note, the permitting process, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think the date was September 2021 that it was permitted.
No. October of 2021 received permission from the Mineral Board.
With that said, we were under siege from a hurricane. We didn't have internet, telephones, TVs, nothing. We couldn't hardly travel the roads. It took us months to get the roads open. As a drainage board, when it comes to a waterway, we can't do anything without posting billboards on every river, canal, or major creek. Why wasn't that done? Why was this, seems like it just was secretly pushed through and nobody was aware of it? I mean, I just found this out like 2.5 weeks ago, and I'm a councilman. It was completely, even our parish president had no awareness. Why didn't y'all have to follow the same guidelines that we have to follow that the Corps makes us do? Why is that?
We followed the rules that it was presented to us.
Hi, I'm Shannon Burke. I'm with Air Products. We did actually follow the rules set up by the state of Louisiana. Yeah, sorry, I'm normally way too loud. We did follow the rules set up by the state of Louisiana for the notice. I can go over that right now if you'd like. I'm sorry to pull my phone out. So on March 2021, Air Products submitted the initial pore space request to the Department of Natural Resources and the Office of Mineral and Energy Board, asking to be placed on the agenda for authority to negotiate with the state. That was March 2021. And I can provide all this to you in writing. And then on April 9th, 2021, the Mineral and Energy Board agenda was publicly posted, and it included that there would be a discussion of the authority to negotiate in a proposed operating agreement between Air Products, the state of Louisiana, and the Department of Wildlife and Fish.
Where was it posted at, ma'am?
I believe that was, yeah, it was posted in Baton Rouge, and also on their website where they post all legal notices.
You know, it was an advocate, is that what you're saying?
Well, I believe it was on the website of the state.
Okay. Right.
And then, would you like for me to keep going? I'm sorry, I have.
Yeah, go ahead and keep going. Keep going.
On April 14th, there was a public Mineral and Energy Board meeting with discussion of this issue with the authority to negotiate with Air Products as to the above parishes on the agenda. The purpose of the notice was to ensure public awareness for the board and Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fish. And it said that they were currently considering entering into an operating agreement for geologic sequestration of carbon dioxide.
Not to cut you off, but did they have a lot of people from the public there at the meeting?
At that particular meeting, April 2021, I don't know. I'm sure we could get those records for you.
Yeah, I mean, like I said,
the meetings that I was at, they were, you know, there was a good group of people, but I did not go to all of the Mineral and Energy Board meetings. So I can keep going through this if y'all would like me to. It's basically, there's at least one meeting every month that was publicized, and in some months there's multiple, going from April to, so there's April, May 2021, June, July, August 2021, August 2021 again, September, and then October 4th, there was a public meeting and comments were received. That was, and then there was a special meeting, a Mineral and Energy Board meeting noticed regarding the proposed agreement. And like I said, I know this is a lot to throw at you, so I'll be happy to provide this in writing.
Was each parish that's involved, were they notified directly, the parish presidents?
I don't know about that, but I can find out. I don't know what the
it's our
legalities
parish,
of.
we- you know, it was
Yes,
our-
sir, I know. I just know that, you know, as a legal matter, that we followed all of the legally required notices.
You're not,
There's a couple things here, and look, I know it's upsetting, and you would think out of courtesy that the parishes would have got some kind of notice. But my understanding, after I heard the initial about it, I started doing a little bit. You know, there's some problems that kind of ties the hands of the parish. One, these are state waters. They could let us know if they wanted to. They don't have to. So that's the first thing. My understanding is that this is supported by the governor's office. I mean, I'm hearing that.
It's an agreement, it's a partnership.
And I also hear that the Mineral Board, the Wildlife and Fisheries, all of those have signed off on it. Now, do they have to notify us? No, they don't. But is it a policy that probably the legislature needs to look up? I don't care if it's state waters or not. If it's in a parish, at least the courtesy of the state letting the parishes know that the state's going to do a project in their parish. We wasn't notified of that, and I guess under the present law, they don't have to do that. As far as the public hearings that they had, if they posted them in their legal posted ways and nobody knew about it, I mean, they did what they had to do to cover what the law says they had to cover. So as bad as this is, and I don't know what the options are that we have. We don't have many. This thing is almost like a train that's already on the track. So they've already got permits to do the initial stuff. Now my question, the only question I had, once y'all do these seismographs and everything, is there a chance that this bottom is not suitable for what y'all wanting to do? So I guess that was my question. When you do all this, you have to present this back to somebody to say, okay, I find and show that it is okay, it isn't okay. Is that my understanding?
Absolutely. Yeah, we only have permits to do the initial characterization and everything necessary to develop the Class 6 permit. So that once we gather all this data and we need to incorporate it into all our models, redo all the simulations, and then prepare very extensive permit application presented either to the EPA Region 6 or the LDNR if they have primacy. Then that kicks off about a 1 to 2 year back and forth where they ask, why did you do this? You know, how come you use these correlations? And we go through that process for several years. And then if the regulators are satisfied that we do indeed have a very safe site that will not leak, will not cause all the issues that are concerned in the citizens of the parish, then we would commission the site, prove again in a process that takes another 6 months to a year to show that everything that we've developed is according to specs. They test out, and then we would get permission to inject, and that would be somewhere in a 2026 timeframe.
So if one good thing came out of this, the public found out early enough now that they can keep their self-advised. We can keep ourselves advised. And then we got to ask our legislators to try to help us with some legislation that, you know, and look, you know, I say this all the time, there's nobody hates change like me. But unfortunately, I'm a dinosaur. Things are going to change whether I like them or not. And you can see the push all over the country now. Everything is, you know, capture this, capture that. You know, if there's no people, we'll have everything captured, but there won't be any people to worry about it. So I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know anything about it. I'm going to try to educate myself on it a little bit. But I think now the public has a chance to stay on top of this. Because from what I'm hearing here, this is not a done deal. I mean.
It
would
is
you-
not a done deal.
You know, so, I mean, there's a lot of things that have to come through y'all testing to even proceed to the next level. So-
Absolutely. In fact, I worked on a project in Shelby, Montana, where we got beyond where we are now, and the site characterization failed because the formation water was less than 10,000 parts per million. Game over. The whole project was so. There are, and we have to go through that process here too, and we're not even close to that point yet. So.
I have a, Joey. I have a couple
Thank
of
you.
questions. I have a few questions. What is your decommissioning process?
Sure. So the plans right now is to the operations would begin in 2026 and go for 25 years, and then at that point the injection would stop, and then there's an additional 50 years of monitoring. So we have very sophisticated monitoring both in the deep subsurface, at a moderate level, well below any groundwater, and then groundwater and then air. And so all those levels will be monitored for 50 years. And then yeah, 50 years after that. So 75 years total.
But then what? What is the decommissioning for the wells?
Sure, and so when operation ceases, then the injection wells will be plugged and abandoned according to the requirements of the EPA or LDNR, and so those wells will be permanently sealed, so plugged with CO2-resistant cement, and we are using corrosion-resistant alloys all the way through the tubulars, and then cut 15 feet below the mud line and permanently marked.
Do y'all have the permits for the seismic study?
The permits for the seismic study. Kim?
You have to come to the microphone.
We have our Office of Coastal Management approval. It's also a joint permit application with OCM and the Army Corps. So we have the first half of it, and based on our conversations with the Army Corps, we expect to receive our seismic approval in the next week or two.
So technically, you're waiting on it.
I'm sorry?
Technically, you're waiting on the whole process of the permit.
Just from the Army Corps.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have one other question. You mentioned 20 wells. What will be above the surface of the water of those, on those 20 sites?
So there'll be a larger platform in the south and a larger platform in the north. That's our current injection strategy, pending getting the actual data and redoing everything, but we don't think it'll be significantly different. Every individual well will have that 7 foot by 16 foot around it to protect the wellhead, and then to service it and so on, to be able to stand on it. And that's the extent of the infrastructure on the well or the lake.
And I'd just like to add that based on the size and the surface area of the lake, those two, what Wayne is calling the larger platforms, that's the equivalent of an index card in a football field. So when you put it in terms of, I thought that was pretty good, but you know, the 20 is like a dice, an individual dice in a football field.
I have one other question. You mentioned you have 29 sites in operation right now, is that correct?
I was just saying that worldwide there are 29 operating sequestration sites.
Okay, how many of those are under a water body?
So, one thing I will say is there are no others that are completely under a lake like ours, but there are a number offshore, in the North Sea and offshore South America and in other areas offshore.
So they're in a water body, just not a small body of water like that.
A larger body. And
But they have the same monitoring requirements, so.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Brown?
Mr. Joseph had a question.
Yep, go ahead, Mr. Joseph.
Were there other options, other sites you could have chosen from?
for sequestration?
Yes.
No, not really. They're for the capacity that we needed. Those are the 3 sites. There are some that were further away.
Based on the items that you used to choose the site, after the process was narrowed down. You know, as I said, do you want to go back to that slide and maybe walk through that process again? Because there seems
Wait, so you're telling me it's something like even the Mississippi itself or the Gulf of Mexico would not have been?
No. So what my team was asked to do was find the ideal geologic setting near where we thought we would build the plant, and so yeah.
And this site was chosen, I would assume, because of the locations of the plants along the river.
Well,
petrochemical plants.
50-mile radius.
Okay. So the only other question I have, and we can't hardly cover much more, but how does the actual CO2 get to the injection site?
A 34-mile full extent pipeline, 24-inch, I believe.
All right, and that pipeline will be on the bottom of the
6 feet below the mud line.
Okay.
On the lake, and then
Clay
Big
Spencer.
boy, I don't want to mess with you.
That's all right. No, I'm Clay Spencer. I'm the project manager over all of the pipelines and the associated facilities. Just for everyone's edification, I was born and raised in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I'm from here, lived here my whole life. So, yes, the pipeline will be approximately 37 miles. It will be approximately 24 inches. And one of the early agreements that we made with the Louisiana Wildlife and Fisheries Board was we will actually be 6 feet below the bottom of the lake bed, which is actually above and beyond what we're actually required to do 4 feet.
Now, it coming from the plant till it gets to the lake.
That's correct.
Is it going to run by the interstate, or where would this pipeline actually?
So it'll actually follow mainly through the Marpaw Wildlife Management Area. We will cross Airline Highway moving northeast into the lake, and we will enter into the lake just on the southwest side.
Clay, can you talk a little bit about the safety features?
So as far as the pipeline goes, one of the main things that we're going to have is a triple redundancy from an instrumentation perspective on leak detection. We will have a very, very robust leak detection system that will be above and beyond anything which you would typically see in a natural gas or even an oil pipeline. In addition to that, we'll utilize an impressed current cathodic protection system, which we will continually monitor, maintain, and ensure that no corrosion is happening, and that's all a part of our in-depth integrity management plan. And all of that is required from both PHMSA and the state.
I just have a comment. A lot of good information tonight. Public put out a lot of good information. I heard Ms. Coates ask earlier about a public hearing on the south end of Tangipahoa Parish. Were you guys committing to that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I think that's very important. I think you need to get information out. You need to answer questions. A number of questions were answered tonight, but it's still got to get out into the public arena. This gentleman here with the green shirt said, you can possibly work together and maybe questions can be answered. People would feel better about this. So I think that is very important that y'all hold that public hearing.
Yes, sir.
And I think that needs to be advertised, locally, Daily Star, Action News 17, websites, whatever. But I think that is most important. Thank you.
Yes, sir, thank you. And I'd just like to add one other thing. In the discussion of, I know that Wayne mentioned that as far as the annual property taxes and the sales and use tax, but it's also, as I understand it, and y'all may already know about this, but the state is looking at a sharing opportunity with the parishes in which the activity is similar to an oil and gas situation. And I'm sure y'all are probably more familiar with that than I am.
Right.
Well, I personally thank everybody that came tonight, and it's good to see a community that feels the way they do, and I respect y'all for coming up here. You knew you were coming to a hostile situation, but I think the only way you really get anything accomplished, everybody's got to work together. And if we can, I think we've had Representative Wheat tell us tonight that he's on board to help get us some legislation. You know, I feel bad that the situation turned out the way it did, but we can move forward with this thing, and maybe we still have enough time to watch everything progress and make sure that everything's going to be done the way it needs to be done if it does happen, because there's still a lot of ifs with this thing. And I think what's going to tell the tale is once the wells and the seismograph, because who knows, you know, 30 years ago, shell dredging was in that lake for a long time. So we don't know what's at the bottom down there. I mean, shell dredging was done so long in there, you don't know, it may be just muck down there, you just don't know. But let's just hope the good thing comes out of it. That's my hope for this whole thing, because it's good to see people taking interest in their communities and their way of life. So I'm glad to see that.
Hey, Bridget, I'll be real quick.
Go ahead, Kim.
So I want to thank y'all for coming. I also want to thank y'all and the Livingston Parish Council for inviting us to the virtual calls, you know, so we can learn more and kind of stay all together, and we all work together. There's a few requests that I have. The meeting also that I do appreciate, and thank y'all for committing to that. I'd like to see if I can get the MSDS sheets on the injection, like what are you going to be doing and how it, like whatever, the chemicals and stuff, and also with, if there's any with the seismic. I got a call that was a constituent that was very worried that there was going to be truckloads of zinc hauled in. So I wasn't sure what that was about. So yeah.
Sorry, I'm just asking Aaron Totten to come up to the.
Sorry, Aaron Totten, I'm in charge of all the seismic. Could you repeat the statement there? I thought I heard you right.
So, yes, so I was told that they were going to be hauling in zinc this week and next week. Okay.
No, nothing to do with us.
Okay. Do you have an MSDS sheet on what you're doing with the seismic testing?
As far as the chemicals we'll be using?
Yes.
Yes, we do have all
Okay.
that. There's really not much to it. The DBX would be one, window cleaner, some batteries, gas, diesel. But we can provide that.
But
It's
yes,
not a big
can
deal.
y'all
Yeah,
provide
it's
that?
not a problem.
Okay, that'd be great. And I'd also like the map of the lake with all the wells and stuff, Wayne,
Yes,
that you
ma'am.
had. And the number of wells and abandoned wells in the lake. If, you know, y'all have a chart of that, so.
29 abandoned wells in the lake.
Okay, 29,
We'll have
okay.
to evaluate every one of them.
And that's a part of getting the new permit.
Okay. So I also just want to kind of mention, like, I have really good relationship with Pontchartrain Conservancy, Louisiana Wildlife Federation and stuff, and neither one of them have heard from you guys.
We've actually met with the Mississippi River Delta Coalition, and the Pontchartrain Conservancy was at the meeting, but we are more than happy to visit with them again. That was, I'm sorry, I'd have to look at my calendar. I believe it was last month.
Okay, that would be great, but if you could reach out to them.
Yes, ma'am.
They even had no idea that y'all were going to be doing the dredging and stuff, so
Okay.
that was a concern of theirs.
No worries. We will, I will get back in touch with Simone, and we will set up whatever they would like for us to do.
Yes, and I'm not sure, I'm getting this kind of secondhand, but there was a, maybe a call for the fire department and the fire chief of what equipment they needed and stuff, but.
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to see y'all provide list of equipment and things that y'all would think or know that our fire department needs.
Aaron, would you like to, this, you mean during the seismic?
Well, both.
Well, it
you
would,
know.
it really, it would only be during the seismic.
Okay, well, let me explain why. So, and I've read and I've also spoke with Mr. Ed about the pipeline safety. So if there's leaks and the carbon dioxide stays low to the water, or the carbon dioxide, which happened in Mississippi, and I know Mississippi was different, or what y'all saying is different, but if somehow there is a leak and it gets up out of the water and it stays low to the water surface, correct? It's heavier than air?
Yes, but it wouldn't get above the water.
It would not get above the water.
Here, let me back away and you can address that situation.
Now, in terms of what you're talking about, pipeline safety and safety awareness, that's very much a part of our overall program that we have to adhere to in accordance with the Code of Federal Regulations. We have to have a continuous public awareness program, continuous training programs, all of that, and it has to be very documented. Air Products, we have a very robust public awareness program, which we actually just got done doing public meetings periodically throughout the life of the pipeline. We have meetings in every parish that we have pipelines operating in, not just CO2 pipelines, but also our hydrogen and other product pipelines.
So this carbon dioxide, if it comes up and somehow gets out the ground and stuff, it's going to stay in the water column. It's not going to come out of the water itself.
I mean, I'm not a chemical engineer, I'm a civil engineer, but I mean, that's basic chemistry, yes.
Okay, because again, our fire department, so you got to think in Mississippi, the CO2 was stalling and stopping cars, and so they were having to evacuate the people to get them away from the CO2. Well, we're in a boat. There's no way to
So one
kind of get away
important
from that.
distinction between the CO2 in Mississippi versus the CO2 with which we're transporting is the presence of hydrogen sulfide gas.
But I thought that was not present according to the investigation report.
It's not according to the investigation report that I read. That's very much of an issue that they were pulling CO2 from a naturally occurring formation in the Jackson Dome, which had high H2S content.
Okay.
We do not have H2S content in our fluid stream.
Okay. Well, I just want to make sure that our fire department, our people are safe. And if
Absolutely.
something happens, I don't want to put further risk of
Certainly
what's
don't.
going on.
Yes, ma'am. We
Okay.
certainly don't want to either. And we are
No.
working with the Livingston Fire Department and Tangipahoa, and we want to be a good partner. We want to find out what the needs are and meet them and address them.
Okay. Well, I think y'all, there's only just one last comment I'd like to make, and I would also like to direct this to the state reps. So there's RS 56-450 that prevents shell dredging on the bottom of Lake Marpaw and Lake Pontchartrain because, like Carlo mentioned, the pollution and stuff. That was the reason Pontchartrain Conservancy was actually brought into existence, because of the pollution. There's also, I believe, some restrictions and different things on the trawling and stuff in the Little Lake. So I want to ask y'all to visit, how can this be done if dredging and things can't be done?
You mean, how can the seismic be done? Or the
Well-
dredging for the
any
prop
of it.
washing for the test well?
Well, also, putting pipelines 6 feet under the lake bottom, you're disturbing that, or potentially disturbing it. So I just want all of that, I want to address, because...
Yes, ma'am, and we're happy to provide this in writing, but I'd like for Clay to speak real quick about how that drilling is going to be done.
Drilling, you mean the
Yeah,
pipeline?
the pipeline, running the pipeline.
So we'll utilize a construction methodology called jetting, which, it will stir up turbidity in the water column, but it will also settle out over time. We're not going to be removing, it's a net zero change.
So,
That's a big part.
Net zero.
We're not pulling up sediment. We're going to utilize the same sediment that we're taking up to bury the pipeline below the subsurface. We're going to be replacing that same sediment. That's what I'm saying. It's a net zero change as far as the actual soil.
Okay. All right. Well, thank y'all. That's all I have.
Yeah,
Yes,
I'd
ma'am.
like to thank y'all for coming. I see a few of you putting your hands up. We can't take comments anymore from the floor. As you've heard, we will have a public hearing, and I encourage all of you to go, and you can ask your questions if you still have things that are unanswered. So thank you, guys.
Thank you for hearing us, and thank you for your time very much, all of y'all.
Senator Mack, did you have anything you wanted to say, or? I mean, Representative Mack. I'm sorry, JR, we can't take questions.
Look, I got an important thing to say.
Well, you should have filled out a public, JR, you should have filled out a request.
I had damage when they did the all wells in this parish.
But
And they said it.
I recommend you go to the,
It did happen.
JR.
Just here to encourage all my friends on the Tangipahoa Parish. I live in Livingston Parish, as you all know, but I spend 80% of my time in Tangipahoa Parish at the ballpark. And I, too, am on that lake, as well as a lot of my friends that are here tonight. And one of the things that's going on in Livingston, we have another meeting tomorrow night with the parish council, is the term that y'all have probably seen in interviews and in the paper about moratoriums. And that was a question I asked. It's my understanding that only one C5 permit has been given out. Just one, not two. Yeah, there's only one. And so Mr. VI asked a very good question. There hasn't been two permits let out. And there's a difference. There's what you call a C5 permit. And I've learned this in the last month. As most of you know, I'm an attorney. I'm not a geologist. But there's been a C5 permit, and that is your test well. And that's not too uncommon from an oil well. If someone come, Carlo, and wanted to drill an oil well in your backyard, and they're going to strike oil, then they would probably seek a C5 permit. And so one of the things that Livingston did here recently is concerning Lake Marpaw, and we were a little late to try it on North Holden, but it issued and passed a moratorium on C5 injection wells, or C5 test wells, I should say. And it was very specific to, and I think Representative, he brought a good point, Representative Wheat did, very specific to just COT sequestration. Because the last thing you want to do is, if someone needed to dig a certain type of well on their property to promulgate their property oil or whatever other minerals they may have, you would not necessarily want to stop that economic progress, but you may want to be specific to that C5 ordinance or moratorium or whatever it is you guys decide you want to do. As Air Products Representative mentioned, then it would convert to what's called a C6 permit, a classification C6 permit, which would actually be your injection well. And those permits have not been granted yet. And so this council, just like the Livingston Council, would have the opportunity, and look, this thing could get battled out in court. I'm not saying that. But I think the real issue is, and I think all of your concerns, what I'm hearing tonight, as well as the people, here's the same concerns that people have in Livingston, where I'm from, is that people are scared, and we may need a little more time to digest it and to get a better plan on where we're going to go, how we're going to go, and if this thing is indeed going to go through. And a moratorium may be what you want to explore, as our colleagues in Livingston have done.
But Sherman, will a moratorium, would it hold up to the state water bottoms?
I think the C6 will. My opinion is the C5 that's been let out, I think you may have an issue because the permit's already been let out.
Well, I don't think the C5 is actually in the Tangipahoa side.
I think it's on the northern side. No, it's in the south. It's in the southern side. You know what parish that is? St. John. So I think Livingston or Tangi, it's one of the things that so you may still have an opportunity for a C5 well and a C6 well on the Tangipahoa part of the lake, just like the Livingston part of the lake, to do something with a moratorium. And a moratorium is not going to kill it. It's not going to stop it.
Your mic's not on.
And as you can see, I'm not for these projects.
How can we do a moratorium on a state project?
Because you can promulgate, this council has the opportunity and the legal basis to promulgate rules surrounding what goes on in Tangipahoa Parish, just like the Livingston Parish Council does. So if you pass a moratorium to slow it down because there's not enough emergency awareness, there's not enough plans for if it damages drinking water or whatnot, then you do have standing to bring something like that in, to then go in and say, look, we're going to create these rules. And again, look, it's just like a subdivision. You create these rules and they follow all of the rules, then we're going to have a problem.
Well, the only thing about a subdivision, it's within the boundaries of our jurisdiction.
Well, but there are parts of that lake that the Tangipahoa Parish is in.
I'm really in a way kind of peed off because it sounds like to me the legislature acted on something and didn't know what they were acting on.
I agree with you. I didn't vote for it.
So here it is. It's going to be thrown in our lap. If you wasn't sure of what you were voting for, excuse the expression, what the hell did you vote for it for?
I didn't vote for it, Carlo.
But I'm not saying who did or who didn't.
Right.
But this is something that's going to affect a lot of people. And if you had questions about this thing, I would have said, let's get some more answers to these questions before, we pass this.
You and I think alike. That's what I did the day it came up.
But I just don't know. I see lawsuit city here, and I don't see where a little parish like us, and I don't see Air Products as a big company that they are, not gonna turn around and sue us, and we spend a ton of money on something that I firmly don't believe we have jurisdiction to do.
Well, Carlo, and you know how much I respect you. I consider you a friend, but I don't think rolling over and playing dead is the best way to do it.
I don't either. I mean, I just don't know at this point what is the right answer.
And I agree. I think that's why, a moratorium, and I'm not telling this council what to do. I mean, you guys do what you think you need to do. But I think a slowdown, which is what I think the people would really like to see, may be the route to go, because it may be that we can't do it. Now, is this a done deal? Somebody asked. 'Cause I think you asked that question. I don't think it's a done deal, and I'm going to tell you why, because I think it's more than state politics. I think it's more than parish politics. I think it's national politics. I think the reason why they're saying that these tests are going to take a year to 2 years is because you have a federal election coming in November, and you have a presidential election coming in about 2 years. And if the Green New Deal gets repealed, which if we get a Republican president, it probably will.
It's all over.
Then all this money goes away, and it's all over. And so I think anything we can do representing the people as a state legislature or a parish council or whatever sub-government entity that we have to maybe slow this process down till we kind of see what's going to go on, I think we need to explore every single avenue that we can.
Well, it's funny you said that. I had to meet with some of the solar people that are looking at the parish, and that was one of my questions. What happens if the subsidies from the federal government are cut out? And the first answer they gave me was the project's scrapped.
Project's dead. You're dealing with the Green New Energy deal. You're dealing with about $80 billion in tax credits. And look, don't blame Mayor Lakeed for wanting to chase them. Don't blame Oxychem for wanting to chase them. They're chasing those tax credits. They're going to make money on them, okay? And that's really what it's about. So we're going to do, when you vote for these federal elections, get beyond the social issues and maybe go more towards, things like this when you cast your vote. And again, I'm not telling anybody how to vote. I can tell you how I'm going to vote. But, that may be what people need to consider. And again, I'm not trying to tell this council what to do. I know what we've done in Livingston is pass these moratoriums, and I do think it's going to slow the projects down in Livingston to give us enough time to do some of the things we need to do or to see if the projects are even going to come to fruition. And so, as a representative, I'm here. I'm going to work with Representative Weed, and we're going to do the best we can. I can tell you that I've already started drafting 2 pieces of legislation as far as the eminent domain portion of the existing bill, as well as the liability portion of the bill. Because I think one of the things, if you read the bill as it stands today, is after 10 years, these companies aren't liable anymore. It goes on the state. And I think that probably tells you a lot, too, about, look, and I'm not bashing anyone. My family, look, we made our bones in the petrochemical industry. It's a vital part of Louisiana. To say it is not telling the truth. But having said that, we keep hearing about, well, this is the safest part that we could put it into. Well, if this is the safest part, tell me what's unsafe about it. That raises a question. If we have to look to the safest portion of what we can do, then there have to be some unsafe things about it. And I think that's why most people are scared. We're talking about even if the CO2, let's say this whole thing passes, okay, and the CO2 injection wells are granted and there's nothing we can do about it, and we maybe lose a lawsuit or whatever happens. There's 2 things we also have to look at. Number one, what economically can Tangipahoa Parish and Livingston Parish get out of it? And those are things we're exploring. One of the things that I think that an environmental lawyer may want to look at is the difference in the definition between storage and deposit. Because when you store something, which is the terms that's being used, you probably intend to try to get it out. You store oil, okay? You intend that purpose, storage is to one day extract it and get it out, sell it, or do whatever you're going to do. They're never planning on getting this stuff out. That's not storage, that's a deposit. They're depositing into the land, okay? That's a big difference, and that's something that I'm looking at and my staff is looking at as far as trying to do something with the mineral board and some of those things. So we can't just lay over. We got to look, we got to fight, we got to represent our people. I know you're going to do that. I want to help you do that. And so, anything I can do, I love Tangipahoa Parish, I love Livingston Parish. As I said the other night, I grew up in that lake. I'm still in the lake. I have a house 5 minutes from the lake. And I'm in there all the time. And so we want to do what we got to do to help you guys. Anything we can do at the legislature, we're going to do. You got a good representative, Representative Muscarella, Representative Wheat, and we're going to work together, and Representative Mincy, who's here tonight, and we're going to work together to try to do what we got to do to bring some legislation next year to either maybe stop it, slow it down, or get us where we need to be. And so y'all have my cell phones. Give me a call. I want to work with you, help you when I can. And thank you, Richard, for letting me talk.
Thank you, Sherman.
Yeah, and look, just to speak, for the council, you know, I do the legal work here for Tangipahoa Parish as well as in Livingston Parish. I'm glad that we do have representatives from the state legislature here tonight to speak to the public here that came out, because I get why you're concerned. I'm concerned too. And I can tell you the parish isn't just sitting on their hands not doing anything about this. If there was something we could do about it, like a moratorium or an ordinance to just ban it for the time being, we would do it. There's been other parishes that have tried to do that when it comes to oil wells and things of very, very similar nature. But because the state controls it, that's the rules that they abide by, not ours. So the state legislature are the ones that need to come up, and I'm glad to hear they're working on it, with some rules to maybe hold them to a tighter standard or make them do more. And, you know, I know that you guys followed the public notices that you are required to do at the state level. And I know Tangipahoa Parish is growing. We're talking about $1 billion almost worth of property. But we're still a small parish. We're a rural community. We are homegrown, and people come out and they're concerned and they want to voice their opinions. We are a parish that when somebody builds a neighborhood or puts up a Dollar General, they got to put up signs on the street. They got to be a certain size. They got to run ads in every newspaper. Everybody knows about it. And now, not only the residents, but the community leaders have to hear about these giant projects going on our lake where we all fish and play and enjoy our families. We got to hear it secondhand, third hand, a day late and $1 short. And that's why everybody's upset. I do think the parish is going to do anything that we can do. We are exploring every avenue possible to try to not necessarily stop it, but to regulate it and to be more informed and to keep you guys abreast of what's going on. And we're going to continue to do that. And thank you all for coming.
All right, President Miller, would you come and give us your report?
Good evening. And first, I'd like to, again, like others, repeat and thank everyone for coming out on the issue of the carbon sequestration storage. It is an important issue that we all know about. Thank you guys for making sure that they had the opportunity to be here and to commit to work with us and everyone in the state to make sure that our citizens are safe, that our environment is safe, and that our economic well-being is taken care of. And I'll assure our citizens that we will make sure we do that together and keep it going. One real quick note, we did find out about it 3 weeks ago, and whenever the presentation was given to us, it was basically not a done deal. All these permits are done. This is what we're going to do. There wasn't any asking of permission. So at this point, it's the testing and the decision on whether they use it, whether they can use the lake. And while that process is going on, we'll make sure that our citizens are well taken care of. So thank y'all for letting me talk about that for a minute. Our first item on the agenda is your financial reports, which have been emailed to you. You have a copy, I believe, on your desk. As always, if you have any questions or specific information you would like, please let our staff know, and they'll be glad to get that put together for you. Actually, I've got item 2 and 3, both need to be postponed at this point. The bid approval or rejection for the fiber optic project there's some questions we have to ask about. We only received one qualified bid or one responsive bid, and there's some question whether we can accept only one bid, with only one bid, let's put it that way, using federal dollars. The federal procurement laws are different from state procurement laws, and we need to do a little bit more looking. We thought we had the answer, but there's been some we've continued to dig and found some possibilities of how we might be able to resolve it going forward. So we may be coming back with that item for that bid approval or rejection in 2 weeks.
So that's item number 2. I don't know if y'all have to take any action from me to table it.
I move that we table.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Wells, second by Mr. VL, that we table.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Richtel? Mr. Mayhew?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Forrest?
Yes.
Mr. Graffia?
Yes.
Thank you. Item number 3, actually, we were actually more efficient than we should have been. The inside in our office, we actually were going to ask for some approval to move on a condemnation of a piece of property, but the deadline, we have to give the citizen enough notice before we do that. Well, that time has not run yet. It's still in. That period is still ongoing. So we'd be a little bit ahead of ourselves if we did it. So we're going to have to pause and come back in 2 weeks, provided the citizen does not respond to that. So we're asking to table that one too.
Motion to table.
Second here.
I have a motion by Mr. Forrest.
It's 4. I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
I have a motion by Mr. Forrest, second by Mr. VL. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Richtel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Forrest?
Yes.
Mr. Graffia?
Yes.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Thank you. The next item is approval to hire a contractor to cut grass at 11173 Highway 22 West in District 10, and then lien the property for the contract cost plus administrative fees. We're asking to do that because our code enforcement has run out of options to get this taken care of. The citizen partially helped, then didn't, then did, then didn't, so we are moving forward to take care of it ourselves this time. With us doing it, we hope that that'll move the property owner to pick it back up so we don't have to do it on a regular basis.
I will so move on this one for sure.
Second here.
If you have any questions for it, our guys are here, our code enforcement here. Nate and Oliver are here to talk about if y'all need any more details.
Just thumbs up for their work.
Yes, sir. Thank
Yeah,
you very
they've been
much.
out
They do a
there
great
multiple
job.
times for multiple years.
Okay, I have a motion by Ms. Coates, second by Mr. VL. Roll call, please.
Mr. Richtel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Forrest?
Yes.
Mr. Graffia?
Yes.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Ms. Coates had 10 votes on that one. If you don't mind, we do have an item that I'd ask that we can add to the agenda. I don't think it'll be a problem. We have a bid process, we have a grant ongoing with the city of Kentwood, and they would like to build a pavilion, and they want to get started to go out for bid. To use those grant funds, the money flows through the parish, so they have to get approval from us. So if y'all would add it to the agenda and then consider whether you'll allow us to go out for bid.
I'll make the motion to add to the agenda.
I'll second it.
All right, I have a motion by Mr. Forrest, second by Mr. Wells, that we amend the agenda to add this item. Roll call, please.
Mr. Mayhew?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Forrest?
Yes.
Mr. Graffia?
Yes.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Richtel?
Yes.
So the city of Kentwood, through a grant through the parish, is wanting to build a pavilion on the block near the library. We've seen some preliminary discussions about it. It's a very welcome site, exciting site. We look forward to the opportunity to do that. If y'all would like to have any information, Mayor Rochelle Bates is here with Mr. George Hayes, who's heading up that project, and Trent Forrest is involved with it too. We can let them make comments, or y'all can vote on it, and they can thank you.
This is another step forward on rejuvenizing Main Street in Kentwood. We're wrapping up on the library, and like he said, it's real close to the library. And there are already activities being done at the site of the pavilion. They're just doing it out in the heat and the sun because there's no covering. So with that, I'll make the motion to go out for bid.
A second.
All right, I have a motion by Mr. Forrest, second by Ms. Coates. Roll call, please.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Forrest?
Yes.
Mr. Graffia?
Yes.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno? Mr. Richtel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew?
Yes.
Thank you very much. If you don't mind, I'd like to give an opportunity to Mayor Bates and/or George Hayes to have a comment.
Thank you for coming tonight, Mayor.
Good evening, good evening.
I know you've had a trying night, been in some of those myself, but to the board, to President Miller, to Mr. Trent Forrest, we thank you all. This will help us to kind of increase our foot traffic down as we revitalize our main street. Also, as we work with Louisiana Main Street to kind of get our city back going, especially that Main Street area where we can have our mom and pop shops, which we know are vital to our communities. This will help us do that, and we certainly thank you for doing this for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's all I have on the report. If anyone has any questions for me, I'll be glad to answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robbie. All right, regular business. Our next item is audit matters. Mr. Dennis, do you want to, or Paul? And I apologize that I didn't move you guys up in the agenda.
Hang out here for a little.
Good evening. I'm Paul Riggs, the Audit Director at James Lambert Riggs and Associates. We met with the Finance Committee earlier, but we have just completed the third year of our 3-year audit contract, and so we are asking for a new 3-year contract with the parish. We are asking for a fee increase of $5,250 per year. That will bring the annual audit cost to a not-to-exceed fee of $57,750. This will be for each of the 3 years, no fee increases. You'd lock that price in for 3 years.
Okay. And just for the record, this will run December 31st of 2022.
2022, 23, and 24, yes.
Okay. All right, we have a motion by Mr. Bruno. Did anyone second that?
Second.
All right, second by Mr. Ingraffia. Roll call, please.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Forrest?
Yes.
Mr. Ingraffia?
Yes.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno? Yes. Mr. Richtel? Mr. Mayu?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
The next item, D.R. Horton, Cypress Reserve Road Integrity Issue, Phases 1 and 2. Mr. Vial?
Yeah, I know it's been a long night, but I do have a prepared statement here I want to read. And what this is about is I have 2 phases of D.R. Horton Cypress Reserve that are asking to be brought into the parish maintenance system. These streets are not up to standard. I have a statement I want to read, and then I'm going to show you a few pictures, so I guess we'll be here for a while. Not really, I'll speed it up, okay? Anyway, before I show you these pictures, D.R. Horton Cypress Reserve 1 and 2, which is located out off of 445 and 22, is proposed to be accepted into the parish maintenance system. And I'll explain how we've gotten to this point with this agenda item. Again, I'm being asked to accept streets, which is a normal parish procedure at some point, in D.R. Horton and Cypress Reserve that obviously have and have had integrity issues. I want the council and the citizens, and that's why I'm doing this tonight, so we have it on Action News 17. I want the council and the citizens to know that I only arrived at this discussion tonight after personally meeting with D.R. Horton representatives twice, gave them the opportunity to avoid this tonight by fixing the issue. I know the administration has also interacted with them at times. The answer from D.R. Horton was, we are turning this over to our legal department, rather than do the right thing for the individuals who bought homes in Cypress Reserve. And I'm sure it is with the other councilmen. My practice is to always ride these areas, making this request before accepting them into the parish maintenance system. And I honestly thought, after observing the patchwork taking place over time while visiting my daughter, that this was a precursor to milling and asphalt overlay. After riding the area again last week, I cannot, in good conscience, accept these into the system, when in the short term, the citizens of Tangipahoa Parish will be responsible for streets that have integrity issues. The pictures I will show you in a minute from 2020, 2021, and 2022, only a small sampling of repairs that have been made over time because of integrity issues. In these pictures, you'll see patches that require asphalt saw cutting, with some of these being extensive, some cross the entire street, some 40 feet long, some being smaller in nature. There are also a number of what I call tar patching of cracks in the street. These, in some cases, are 30 to 40 to 50 feet long. I actually rode through this area again last week, and this is not a scientific count, but I counted more than 175 quote-unquote repairs and integrity areas. If we take these streets into the Tangipahoa Parish maintenance system, when will the next number of integrity issues surface, and how many will this be? The taxpayer will foot the bill if these streets are brought into the parish system. D.R. Horton Cypress Reserve has sold a product, homes, to hundreds of individuals in this neighborhood and have an obligation to deliver a quality product, not only in the homes sold, but also in the infrastructure arena and in this case, the streets. We as councilmen are obligated to look out for and make decisions that are in the best interest of the welfare of the citizens of Tangipahoa. D.R. Horton is obviously not acting in the best interest and welfare of our citizens and Cypress Reserve residents. Taking these streets into the parish maintenance system will only place a burden on the citizens that D.R. Horton sold homes to. This is a corporation not following through on its commitment to the home builders. So I'm going to show you a few pictures, and I'll try to hurry this up. Not that anybody's had a long night, but let's see here. Let's see, I think I'll do it this way. Think I can share this, please? Council chamber? Up there? Got it? Okay. All right, and these are from, started in 2020. So the things you'll see, some of them obviously have been repaired, but it tells us that we're continuing to have issues with these streets. I'll thumb pretty quick. This is just a big tar patch, another tar patch, another tar patch. Here's a obvious failure. Now, some of these have been repaired since then, but again, they keep surfacing. This is in the year 2020. This is another one in 2020. So it's been going on 2 or 3 years. 2020, another one, another saw cut. I'll flip forward. Here's another one in 20. We get into year 2021. Here we have another failure, another failure, another saw cut, another failure. And this is just a side road failure. Here's another tar patch failure. Here's another tar patch. Here's another saw cut. And I'll just scroll forward a little bit. Here's another one in 21, trying to get to 22. Still in 21. And the way I figured out how to do this is Jill taught me how to do this afternoon. And here's another one. Here's another one. Scroll forward here, 22, if I can get to 22. Okay, 21. All right, here's 22. Obviously, the patches are getting bigger. Okay, so 3-year span, 20, 21, 22, the patches are getting bigger. Look at these. This looks like, I don't know, what, 100 feet, 150 foot of patch? Here's another one. Here's another. These were recently done in August of this year. And here's another one of what I call the tar patches. Another patch. Another patch. Now, I'm being asked to take this in the parish maintenance system. In good conscience, I can't do this. So my question would be, if we've had these failures in 20, 21, and 22, and Cypress Reserve wants me to put this in the parish maintenance system, what's coming in 23, 24, and 25? And when it comes, because it's coming, guess who's fixing them? Us. And that is absolutely wrong. So for whatever reason, I've dealt with other developers or other builders. Generally, they work with you. For some reason, this group is not. And they have put this in the attorney's hands. So that's all my statements and comments, but I want to ask one question to the attorney, who I know is talking to his assistant legal counsel over there. Since they made a decision to allow attorneys to handle this situation, my question to you is, what actions can we take, or I recommend, or you recommend? Can we cease permitting Cypress Reserve until this issue is legally resolved? And I'm not asking you to answer that question tonight. I'm just saying, what other actions can we take?
That is something that we're going to look into. In the interim, we've spoken with our parish engineer as well as some other parish employees. And I spoke with D.R. Horton's attorney, and I told them our intention right now is to go out and take some core samples of these roads to determine whether or not they're up to the standard. You know, the soil underneath it,
Yes.
the underbed, the actual, you know, is it enough inches of asphalt? And if any of that is not okay or substandard, we're not obligated to take them in. And it looks like the roads are having a pretty hard time holding up right now.
Well, I guess the big point is that you can, these are documented pictures I didn't take, and they were taken by the Road and Bridge Group, okay, in 2020. I mean, that's a couple years ago, 2.5 years ago. Then you got the same thing in 21. Then you got the same thing in 22. So I think, anyway, I've had my say. I know it's been a long night. Appreciate y'all listening, and appreciate the citizens listening also.
2022 trick-or-treat hours, we're recommending Monday, October 31st from 5 to 8.
We ain't gonna fight.
I'll second it.
Who did it when he wasn't here?
I didn't.
Hey, he even did it when he wasn't on the council those few years, huh?
Well, and not only that, and we will never change trick or treat from trick or treat day. We did it one time, and every mother in the parish like to come and cut our head off. So trick or treat is on the day of trick or treat.
I didn't have my mic on, so I'm going to repeat that just for the record. Our 2022 trick-or-treat hours, we're recommending Monday, October 31st from 5 to 8. And I believe I have a motion from Mr. Ridgell and a second from Mr. Bruno. Roll call, please.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Forrest?
Yes.
Mr. Graffia?
Yes.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno? Mr. Ridgell?
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yeah.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
All right, who's ordering pizza? Who's ordering the pizza?
You talk about eggs and bacon, and where are we going?
I just turned to page 2, and I still have a page and a half left. All right, adoption of TP Ordinance 2253, an ordinance repealing the language of Chapter 44 in its entirety and reserving the chapter. This was some duplicated language that we're just trying to clean up. This is a recommendation from the Development Regulation Committee.
I so move, Madam Chair.
Yeah, I'll second.
Have a motion by Mr. Wells, second by Ms. Coates. Roll call, please.
Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Forrest?
Yes.
Mr. Graffia?
Yes.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno? Mr. Ridgell?
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes. Adoption of TP Ordinance 2254, an ordinance amending and enacting Chapter 36, Planning and Development, Article 5, Standards for Development of Property, Section 36-112, Special Classification Property Development Standards, A4, Spacing of Manufactured Home. This is also a recommendation from the Development Regulation Committee.
So move.
Second.
Have a motion by Mr. VL, second by Mr. Wells. Roll call, please.
Mr. Forrest?
Yes.
Mr. Graffia?
Yes.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno? Mr. Ridgell?
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Adoption of TP Ordinance 2255, an ordinance amending and enacting Chapter 36, Planning and Development, Article 5, Standards for Development of Property, Section 36-116, Special Use Residential Commercial Developments, C2, Maximum Density and Minimum Acres. This is from the Development Regulations Committee as well.
So move.
Second.
A motion by Mr. VL, second by Ms. Coates. Roll call, please.
Mr. Graffia?
Yes.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno? Mr. Ridgell?
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Forrest?
Yes.
The next one is adoption of TP Ordinance 2256, an ordinance amending and enacting Chapter 36, Planning and Development, Article 8, Developments with Special Provisions, Section 36-222, Mining Operations. This is where we had a duplication that we're cleaning up, and as the man came forward at the beginning of the meeting during public hearing, we have an oversight where a date was not carried over, so my brain is too tired to think about this. So Brad, tell us what we need to do.
It's not going to change any. It's not going to change anything other than clarifying what we were already putting in place. The original language was enacted in July of 2008, and so in the new language where it says, as of the effective date of the ordinance from which this article is derived, we're going to just put a comma, July 14th, 2008. Comma, will be exempt from all the requirements of this article. That way, if there was an existing dirt pond or dirt pit prior to July of 08, not July of 21 or whatever the other year was.
Brad, my understanding though, the charter,
Turn your mic on.
my understanding of the charter, you can only amend before you introduce. This has already been to public hearing as it stood.
Right, and the language, the date was already in there. If you looked at the bottom,
On
chapter 44, at the bottom of it, the date 7408 was included, and that's what this date, what this phrase is referencing, so we're just clarifying what this
But I know,
phrase is
but do we need to
referencing.
reintroduce this and have public hearing with the new wording in it? Because we've never amended anything after it went to public hearing. We could amend prior to going to public hearing at introduction, but because you actually, if somebody would have spoke on it, they were speaking on the document that was there. So if it's not that big a deal, why not just reintroduce it with the new language in it? And then how we would be safe.
That's fine. We were just cleaning up language anyway. It's not, Tracy, you have any issue?
As long as
with
you don't
that?
have like a deadline or anything y'all trying to read.
No, okay.
I mean, it may never get questioned, and then it may get questioned. That's the thing.
Will someone make a motion to
I'll
table?
make a motion to table.
All right, so, I have a motion by Mr. Bruno.
Second.
Who seconded?
Trent. Trent.
Second by Mr. Forrest to table item 14, and that will go back on the agenda at the next meeting, yes. Roll call.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Richtel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Forrest?
Yes.
Mr. Ingraffia?
Yes.
Item 15, adoption of TP ordinance 2258, an ord...
57.
Oh, I'm sorry, I scratched 14.
Back up, girl.
All right. Item 14, adoption of TP ordinance 2257, an ordinance amending and enacting Chapter 36, Planning and Development, Article 8, Developments with Special Provisions, Section 36-224, Renewable Energy Power Plants, C, General Regulations.
So
This-
moved.
Second.
All right, have a motion by Mr. Joseph, second by Mr. VL. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Richtel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew? Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates? Mr. Forrest?
Yes.
Mr. Ingraffia?
Yes.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Adoption of TP ordinance 2258, an ordinance to grant a variance to section 36-112, special classification property development standards for John Malazzo Senior, assessment 5413508 in District 2.
So moved. Second.
A motion by Mr. Ingraffia, second by Mr. Forrest. Roll call, please.
Mr. Richtel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Forrest?
Yes.
Mr. Ingraffia?
Yes.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yeah.
Adoption of TP ordinance 2259, an ordinance to grant a variance to section 36-112, special classification property development standards for Charlie T. Moore and Jody Young, assessment 2122006 in District 7.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Wells, second by Mr. VL.
Mr. Mayhew.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayhew. Roll call, please.
Mr. Mayhew?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Forrest?
Yes.
Mr. Ingraffia?
Yes.
Mr. Joseph?
Yeah.
Mr. Bruno? Mr. Richtel?
Yes.
Adoption of TP ordinance 2261, an ordinance to grant a variance to section 36-90, minor subdivision standards for Terrence Whitaker / Century Financial Services, assessment 2968118 in District 8.
So move.
Second.
Have a motion by Mr. VL, second by Mr. Ingraffia. Roll call, please.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Forrest?
Yes.
Mr. Ingraffia?
Yes.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Richtel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew?
Yes.
We have one introduction of TP ordinance 2260, an ordinance amending and enacting Chapter 52, vehicles for hire. The committee met, and this ordinance had not been updated in 28 years, so we were just kind of cleaning up some language. This is for the ambulance services.
Oh, okay.
So move.
I second it.
A motion by Mr. Mayhew, second by Mr. Wells. Roll call, please.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Forrest?
Yes.
Mr. Ingraffia?
Yes.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno? Mr. Richtel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
right, adoption of TP Resolution Number R22-24, a resolution of the Tangipahoa Parish Council President Government authorizing the filing of an application with the Louisiana Department of Transportation and Development for a grant under any of the following FTA programs managed through the Louisiana Department of Transportation and Development. This has to do with the Council on Aging.
So move.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Joseph, second by Mr. VL. Roll call, please.
Ms. Hyde? Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates? Yes. Mr. Forrest?
Yes.
Mr. Graffia?
Yes.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Richtel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Mr. Vial and Mr. Wells may need that bus. I want to help them out.
Yeah, I heard it. All right, Grandpa.
All right. Adoption of TP Resolution Number R2225, a resolution of the Tangipahoa Parish Council, President Government for State CWEF Water Grant.
I so move, Madam Chairman.
Second.
Have a motion by Mr. Wells, second by Ms. Coates. Roll call, please.
Ms. Coates? Yes. Mr. Forrest?
Yes.
Mr. Graffia?
Yes.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Richtel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes. Did you want to comment? Okay.
No, ma'am, I was just gonna, help if anybody need anything.
Adoption of TP Resolution R2226, a resolution of the Tangipahoa Parish Council, President Government for State LGAP Grant.
This is a grant for the
What is that
arena.
one for, Rob?
It's one of the annual grants we get. They're relatively small. We do various different things with them. And I just drew a dead blank on what we're planning on doing this one for. I was about to say it, and it just left my
I
mind.
think it's for the arena.
The arena?
Yeah, usually we do it at the arena.
Communication stuff.
The display at the arena is what we're probably looking to do.
So moved.
All right, have a motion by Mr. Bruno, second by Mr. Mayhew. Roll call, please.
Mr. Forrest?
Yes.
Mr. Graffia?
Yes.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno? Mr. Richtel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates? Yes.
All right, board appointments. We have one appointment to the Tangipahoa Voluntary Council on Aging. This is a new appointment of Mr. Bruce Bordelon to fill an unexpired term of Ms. Colleen Ebarb, and Mr. Mayhew's making this appointment.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion by Mr. Mayhew, a second by Mr. Richtel. Roll call, please.
Mr. Graffia?
Yes.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno? Mr. Richtel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates? Yes. Mr. Forrest?
Yes.
All right, we have one beer, wine, and liquor. This is actually in my district, and they opened and started selling beer without their permit, so they were shut down last week, and I checked over the weekend, and they did have everything covered up, so this is Sunny Times 7 LLC in District 9, if someone would make that motion for me.
So move.
I have a motion by Mr. Ingraffia, second by Mr. Mayhew. Roll call, please.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno? Mr. Richtel?
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Vial?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Ms. Coates? Mr. Forrest?
Yes.
Mr. Ingraffia?
Yes.
All right, legal matters.
Nothing else to report on this evening. Thank you.
All right. Councilman's privileges, I have one thing. What? I'll make it brief. Tangipahoa Parish government is partnering with Southeastern, and tomorrow night there will be a wellness summit for recovery and mental health, and that's in Ponchatoula at PARD. It's going to start at 4:30 with networking, and the program will actually start at 5. And I think that's everywhere out there on social media, on a TPG page. So if anyone's interested in going to that, you can register online. Mr. Mayhew?
Well, I just want to say that I went to the arena, took my grandkids to the arena this weekend, to the rodeo, and it was great. It was a great family function, and got to see our secretary even ride.
She did a great job.
But they did.
Of course, I have to say Andy Career's daughter did come in one spot ahead of her. But
And I got to say that.
younger. She's younger.
Her husband's bull didn't let anybody ride but one at the end.
Yep.
Threw him
I
off.
got one,
Mr. Bruno?
very quick. How are we coming on the prisoner houses. I don't know what else you call them, halfway houses or whatever you call them. The illegal houses. What's the latest?
Referred to as sober living homes?
Yes.
There you go.
What is that, sober living home?
Sober living homes.
What's the latest on the two?
I spent a lot of time speaking with the Fair Housing Authority Action Committee out of New Orleans, who is contacting me on behalf of the operators and owners of the sober living facilities. They have made an official request for reasonable accommodations because if you are a recovering addict, you are considered handicapped under federal law. While I believe addiction is a real thing, my personal beliefs are different than federal law. That being said, they can request a reasonable accommodation, meaning that they want to be exempt from our ordinances. Part of our ordinance requires fire marshal approval. I advise them that the parish is not going to take part in waiving any fire marshal requirements, because if they jam a bunch of people in a house where the fire marshal would require some type of fire suppression system, I said, I don't want the parish waiving that. The house catch on fire and one of these handicapped people can't get out and they burn up. That's not gonna come back on us. So I believe they're submitting a written formal request to the fire marshal for that reasonable accommodation.
So what you basically telling me they can have them?
They definitely can have them, but
But, I mean, we have this in place for the handicap and all of that, and we've never had any of them ever ask for any special requirements. So, they don't have to come before us to, like that. I mean, I've had them in my district for years, but they always came before us, applied, filled out an application.
And then whenever the federal law changed, we had a different president.
So now, I guess our ordinance is obsolete.
It's not obsolete, but they can always ask for a reasonable accommodation, but they have to be qualified when asking for that reasonable accommodation. And at some point, that accommodation can become unreasonable.
Now, do they have to have an occupational license and all of that, since I'm sure they're getting funded to pay for that?
Now, they're telling me they provide no services of any kind in these homes, other than drug testing. Because my argument was, how do we know? You have to be a recovering addict to be considered handicapped under federal law. You can't be actually using narcotics and still be an addict. At that point, you lose your handicap status under FHA.
But I don't understand, brother, they're charging these people, they're charging somebody to do this, to stay there. Why can't they go to any guidelines of anybody else that got to buy a license? Come to front of this council. Our ordinance states you have to come in front of this council.
My thing is, how do you
Federal
know
or
that the
not.
house is even sufficient to hold
You don't.
1, 2, or 5 people?
Well, that's the fire marshal requirement, which is why I told them they have to make that reasonable accommodation request directly to them.
Okay.
That's beyond our purview. It's unfortunate federal law has taken over this arena, and it's becoming more and more difficult to battle.
Well, maybe at the next agenda, we need to put on there to send a letter to the fire marshal, requesting that they do not grant a variance to the ordinance. Because why would you not want the people to be there safe?
Right.
I mean, that doesn't make any sense.
All right, and my other question I had too is, like I said, if you are currently using, you're no longer considered handicapped. You have to be a recovering addict, right? In recovery.
Right.
So they're drug testing these people, so they tell me, while they're living in the homes. Well, how do we know the people living in the homes are actually being drug tested? How do we know they're passing the drug test?
Right, who's
They're
monitoring
using this recovering addict handicap, in my opinion, is both a sword and a shield. Absolutely. They're telling us, oh, well, we're recovering, addicts, so we don't have to abide by your ordinances. But at the same time, they're saying we don't have to tell you about it either.
And what point are you not a recovering addict? You're a cured person.
Another good question. They also have to be a recovering addict to the point where their status or handicap prohibits them from obtaining equal access to fair housing, and their ability to hold down a steady job with major responsibilities. Once they're able to obtain those levels of things, they're no longer considered handicapped.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. It's an uphill battle.
All right, any more councilman's privileges? I want to remind everybody, we have a fire board meeting after this, and I know you guys have been sitting out there for a long time, but can we take about a 5-minute recess?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Hang on.
All right, Mr. Wells?
Whoa.
Oh, you have one?
Yeah, Dr. Weeks, since you made it back in here, would you just keep us informed on anything you find out?
I respect that very much, and I absolutely will. Things happen in Baton Rouge that are applications, but if I know of any or any information that I can share with you guys, I'll be glad to.
Thank you.
Mr. Wells?
We have been patient tonight, and I just want to give everybody a special compliment on that. And the council did what a public body does. We listened until they had nothing else to say. So I move that we adjourn this meeting.
Have a second?
Yeah, thanks.
All right.